हेलो फ्रेंड्स, वेलकम बैक टू माय चैनल। तो आज की वीडियो में इसका नेक्स्ट पार्ट कंटिन्यू करने वाला हूँ। तो बिना किसी देरी के चलिए शुरुआत करते हैं।
Chapter 156, The Titan Giant Ape Can't Even Compete with the Auspicious Beast. In the chat group, the mother and daughter, Qian Runshui and Bibi Dong, were at each other's throats once again. The veteran members had long since grown accustomed to this tense animosity between them. Unfazed, they didn't even have the interest to try and mediate the argument. As for the new members, after carefully reading the previous contents of the diary copy, they also had a general understanding of the situation. They knew the relationship between this mother and daughter was extremely poor, so they didn't pay much mind to their heated exchange. While everyone was quietly spectating, Ning Rongrong suddenly noticed a key point. Seven Treasures Little Rich Girl, EH. Wait, I have a question. Seven Treasures Little Rich Girl, I just did some careful calculations and suddenly noticed a key point. Seven Treasures Little Rich Girl, you just said that a 100-year Titan Giant Ape can rival a 10,000-year Spirit Beast. Seven Treasures Little Rich Girl, but the Auspicious Beast's 15,000 years of cultivation is only comparable to a 100,000-year Spirit Beast. Seven Treasures Little Rich Girl, if we do a direct conversion like that, then at the same rank, wouldn't the Titan Giant Ape be much more powerful than the Auspicious Beast? Ning Rongrong's innocent mathematical conversion instantly left several vicious beasts of the Stardew Great Forest speechless. The most arrogant one, ZG, immediately posted a ruthless mockery in the group. Abyssal Demoness, hey, truly laughable. Titan Giant Ape, how is it even worthy of comparing combat power with the Auspicious Beast? Abyssal Demoness, little girl, your math is absolutely atrocious. Abyssal Demoness, earlier, Baiji gave an example saying a 100-year Titan Giant Ape is comparable to a Spirit Beast with 10,000 years of cultivation. Abyssal Demoness, that refers to being comparable to those 10,000-year Spirit Beasts with extremely ordinary bloodlines. Abyssal Demoness, and saying the Auspicious Beast's 15,000 years is comparable to a 100,000-year combat power refers to comparing it with vicious beasts like us who possess top-tier bloodlines. Abyssal Demoness, the reference points between these two are on completely different levels, understand? At this moment, the gentle Baiji also stepped in to smooth things over, following up on ZG's words with a detailed explanation. Emerald Guardian, ZG is right, and there's another key point. Emerald Guardian, I don't know if you human spirit masters have the concept of ultimate attributes. Emerald Guardian, let me put it this way, the Titan Giant need very long. Emerald Guardian, among all its attributes, the strength attribute is the most prominent, but it is not the ultimate strength. Emerald Guardian, whereas the Auspicious Beast not only possesses ultimate light and ultimate fire, these dual ultimate attributes. Emerald Guardian, it also possesses the extremely rare power of destiny, as well as exceptionally strong mental force. Emerald Guardian, it can even use the divine artifact level Golden Dragon Spear. Emerald Guardian, if the Auspicious Beast and the Titan Giant Ape fought at the same level, their win-loss ratio would probably be a 3-to-7 split. Seven Treasures Little Rich Girl, a 3-to-7 split, so the Titan Giant Ape still has a 30% chance of winning. Abyssal Demoness, stupid, a 3-to-7 split means the Auspicious Beast only needs 3 hits to break that Titan Giant Ape into 7 pieces. Abyssal Demoness, so, comparing the Titan Giant Ape to the Auspicious Beast, how can they even be compared? Abyssal Demoness, how can the Titan Giant Ape even hope to compete? Seeing Baiji and ZG belittling the Titan Giant Ape in the group like this, Xiaowu immediately felt a bit unhappy. Although she knew in her heart that these two were only referring to the Titan Giant Ape species. However, her closest younger brother, Ming, was also a Titan Giant Ape. The protective Xiaowu couldn't help but want to speak up for Ming, so she immediately retorted in the group. Bunny who loves Donghulu, I don't think that's necessarily true. Bunny who loves Donghulu, Ming, that is, the 100,000-year Titan Giant Ape, although he doesn't have ultimate attributes. Bunny who loves Donghulu, at least he has an extremely rare gravity domain. Bunny who loves Donghulu, does the Auspicious Beast have a domain? Under the suppression of a domain, it's not certain who would win or lose. Facing Xiaowu's argument, ZG sneered repeatedly and shot back mercilessly. Abyssal Demoness, you can't calculate it like that. You're using a 100,000-year Titan Giant Ape to suppress an Auspicious Beast that only has 15,000 years. Abyssal Demoness, do you think if it were just a 10,000-year Titan Giant Ape, it would possess a domain? Abyssal Demoness, if both their cultivations were at the 100,000-year level, the Auspicious Beast would most likely awaken a powerful domain as well. Abyssal Demoness, and even if we take a step back and assume the Auspicious Beast didn't awaken a domain. Abyssal Demoness, at the same 100,000-year cultivation level, the Titan Giant Ape would absolutely not be a match for the Auspicious Beast. Abyssal Demoness, a domain, in the end, is just a means to enhance attack and control, it doesn't mean invincibility. Stardew Great Forest, Lake of Life. ZG looked at the diary copy, her beautiful face full of disdain, and she snorted coldly in her heart. Just as she said, things like domains don't represent everything. Even someone as strong as the beast god DTN doesn't have a particularly unique domain. But DTN possesses the pure true dragon bloodline of the black-eyed golden dragon king. Furthermore, he also possesses the peerless killing weapon personally bestowed by the dragon god claw. That is the true posture of invincibility. Even if the Snow Empress of the extreme north, who has 700,000 years of cultivation, were to come without the advantage of the extreme north's ice and snow terrain, under the same cultivation level, the Snow Empress would absolutely not be a match for DTN. Even though the Snow Empress herself possesses the extremely powerful Imperial Cold Sky Snow Dance Radiant Sun domain, it still wouldn't work. For vicious beasts like them standing at the peak of the continent, condensing a domain is actually a relatively simple matter. Just like Baiji, she specializes in life and healing. If she wanted to, she could condense a massive life domain at any time. However, this domain is actually more akin to a large-scale group healing skill and doesn't provide much of an increase to her own combat power. So she simply didn't bother with it. ZG also knew the details of the gravity domain that the Titan Giant Ape clan was so proud of. Within that gravity domain, an enemy's weight would become 10 times its original, or even heavier. But in ZG's view, it was essentially just a pure control-type spirit ability. It's just that the coverage area of this control ability is quite large. In the face of a true ultimate attack, such a domain was, in her eyes, completely useless and could be easily torn apart. At this time, the newcomers in the chat group were attracted by this profound topic. Ice Blue Feather, seniors, what are ultimate attributes? Ice Blue Feather, can someone explain it to this junior? P.S. Please vote, please keep reading tilde. Chapter 157, the so-called ultimate, Qian Runshui's doubts. Facing the newcomer's humble inquiry, the gentle Baiji patiently answered the question. Emerald Guardian, in Lin Yuan's previous diary entries, this matter was actually mentioned. Emerald Guardian, Lin Yuan's god-slaying spear spirit possesses the ultimate attribute of slaughter. Emerald Guardian, the so-called ultimate attribute actually refers to a certain element or attribute reaching the so-called ultimate in terms of quality. Emerald Guardian, once this attribute reaches the ultimate level, it will produce an extremely strong suppression effect when facing opponents with the same attribute. Baiji thought for a moment and used the people currently in the group as an example. Emerald Guardian, for example, those two from the extreme north who just joined the group. Emerald Guardian, Ice Empress and Snow Empress, they both possess the ultimate ice attribute. Emerald Guardian, when facing other ice attribute spirit masters or spirit beasts. Emerald Guardian, as long as the opponent's rank does not exceed theirs by too much, they can exert a massive elemental suppression on the opponent. Emerald Guardian, if you human spirit masters possess an ultimate attribute, your combat power will also undergo a qualitative change. Emerald Guardian, you can likely fight across two major stages. Emerald Guardian, in other words, a human spirit saint with an ultimate attribute would have a true combat power completely equivalent to a titled Douluo. As soon as these words came out, all the human spirit masters lurking in the group chat looked at Baiji's answer and suddenly saw the light. Fighting across two major stages. This was simply unheard of. Even someone as strong as Bibi Dong, when she was a spirit saint, would absolutely not have been a match for a titled Douluo. And Xiao Wu, who was reading the diary in the dormitory, understood everything in an instant as if enlightened. She finally knew why Lin Yuan, when he had just reached level 20 as a spirit grandmaster, could single-handedly defeat that 8,000-year-old spirit beast. It wasn't just because he had that insane set of one-word battle armor and the terrifying boost of the god-slaying domain. It was even more because his spirit possessed the ultimate attribute of slaughter. This ultimate attribute naturally gave him the heaven-defying capital to fight across two major stages. When all these various boosts were stacked together, it resulted in him having a combat power infinitely close to a spirit emperor even though he was only level 20. This was truly crazy. However, Xiao Wu thought to herself that while such a boost seemed extremely powerful, the load on the body must be immense and definitely couldn't be sustained for long. After all, Lin Yuan was only level 20 at that time, his own spirit power reserves were very limited. However, what Xiao Wu didn't know was that her judgment of Lin Yuan's endurance was completely wrong. Because Lin Yuan had been practicing the divine rank cultivation technique, the chaos god-slaying art. The spirit power in his body was not only incredibly pure, but its quality was also far higher than that of ordinary spirit masters on this continent. Therefore, the massive spirit power consumed by those insane boosts was actually well within his range of acceptance. Not to mention, he had now obtained the 9-yang divine skill, which allowed for endless regeneration. When it came to endurance, Lin Yuan had never feared anyone. At this time, inside the Crown Prince's mansion in Heaven-Do City, Qian Runshui, who had been following the group chat, felt her heart skip a beat as she looked at the terrifying power of an ultimate attribute. I really don't swing that way, senior, I would like to ask a question. I really don't swing that way. Does my six-winged angel martial soul also possess this legendary ultimate attribute? I really don't swing that way. This is, after all, a divine rank spirit inherited from a divinity. I really don't swing that way. Also, besides having powerful combat strength, does an ultimate attribute have any help or impact on daily cultivation? To this question, Ji Yuina provided an answer. Silver Dragon, to correct a misconception of yours, it's not the case that just because it's a divine rank spirit, it must have an ultimate attribute. Silver Dragon, the reason the six-winged angel martial soul is called a divine rank spirit is simply because a certain spirit master who once possessed that spirit reached level 100 and became a god. Silver Dragon, and the direct lineage spirit he passed down became tainted with divinity, so it's naturally called a divine rank spirit. Ji Yuina paused and continued typing. Silver Dragon, as for whether your six-winged angel martial soul truly possesses an ultimate attribute. Silver Dragon, I can't make a judgment for you directly, since I haven't personally felt the power of your spirit. Silver Dragon, however, a spirit with an ultimate attribute will have a very obvious characteristic during cultivation. Silver Dragon, that is, for that spirit master, during the period between level 30 and level 70. Silver Dragon, their spirit power accumulation and cultivation speed will become extremely slow, like a snail's pace. Silver Dragon, this is because the ultimate attribute is constantly compressing and purifying your spirit power. Silver Dragon, but once you cross the level 70 watershed, your cultivation speed will experience an explosion and become very fast. Silver Dragon, you can think back and see if you've experienced this feeling during your own cultivation process. Looking at this passage, Qian Runshui in the Crown Prince's mansion was slightly stunned. She fell into deep thought. Thinking back carefully on her cultivation speed after breaking through level 30, it seemed it really was many times slower than before level 30. Originally, she had always thought it was because she had come to the Heaven-Do Empire alone to execute the infiltration plan. Because she had to handle complicated government affairs every day, she didn't have time to focus on her cultivation. But now, being reminded by Ji Yuina like this, she suddenly realized. It turned out that among the reasons, the fundamental factor was actually the ultimate attribute constantly compressing spirit power, thereby dragging down the cultivation speed. She was a peerless genius with innate full level 20 spirit power. Yet she was already 17 years old, and she was merely an early-stage spirit emperor who had just broken through. Even then, it was because she had good luck over the past 2 years and obtained many guaranteed rewards for increasing her cultivation from the diary copy. Otherwise, with her slowed cultivation speed, she would at most be a high-level spirit king by now. Thinking of this, the doubts in Qian Runshui's heart were completely resolved. I really don't swing that way. Thank you for your guidance, senior. I think I understand. I really don't swing that way, so it seems my six-winged angel martial soul definitely possesses an ultimate attribute. I really don't swing that way, however, my six-winged angel martial soul possesses 3 attributes simultaneously, divinity, light, and fire. I really don't swing that way, I myself am not sure which of these attributes is the one that has truly reached the ultimate. Chapter 158, Tang Hao sneaks into Heaven-Do. Ji Yuina's reply once again cleared up her confusion. Silver Dragon, it's quite simple. As far as I know, the core primary attributes of the angel god have always been divinity and light. Silver Dragon, fire, on the other hand, is merely a secondary attribute that comes with it. Silver Dragon, in that case, there is a high probability that your 2 primary attributes, divinity and light, have already reached the ultimate level, making them dual ultimates. Silver Dragon, and that accompanying fire attribute has clearly not yet reached the ultimate level. While the girls were still engaged in a heated discussion in the chat group, a black-robed figure appeared silently in the shadows of the academy. This person was tall, his entire body shrouded in a voluminous black cloak, exuding a cold, withered aura that warned others not to approach. He was none other than the clear sky Douluo, Tang Hao, who had traveled in secret all the way from the remote Nuoding city. Hiding in the shadows, Tang Hao quickly locked onto his target using his massive mental force, which was at the titled Douluo level. He effortlessly located the girls' dormitory where Xiao Wu was staying. However, standing on a large tree outside the dormitory building, Tang Hao's brow furrowed tightly, his eyes filled with confusion. What's going on? Tang Hao muttered to himself. After not seeing her for just over 2 years, why had that special aura unique to a 100,000-year spirit beast completely vanished from Xiao Wu's body? This simply defied common sense. Furthermore, Tang Hao suddenly recalled something Yu Xiaogang had told him back in Nuoding City. Shortly after he left Nuoding City, poisoned Douluo Dugubo and sword Douluo Chen had taken Dugu Yan and Ning Rongrong to Nuoding Academy. Could it be that those two powerful titled Douluo failed to discover Xiao Wu's identity as a transformed 100,000-year spirit beast back then? Thinking of this, Tang Hao even experienced a moment of doubt regarding his own perception. Could my perception have been wrong when I was at Nuoding Academy? Is Xiao Wu actually not a transformed 100,000-year spirit beast, but just an ordinary commoner genius? But this absurd idea only existed in his mind for a split second before he decisively dismissed it. That was absolutely impossible. He, Tang Hao, possessed a 100,000-year spirit ring on his own body. Moreover, his wife Yin was herself a transformed 100,000-year blue-silver emperor spirit beast. Having lived day and night with a transformed spirit beast, he was more sensitive to this aura than anyone. Anyone else in the world might perceive it wrongly, but not him. Since my perception wasn't wrong, the only explanation is. Tang Hao's gaze deepened. Xiao Wu must have suddenly acquired a peerless treasure that can perfectly hide her spirit beast aura. Following this line of thought, Tang Hao immediately thought of the unusually close relationship between Xiao Wu and Lin Yuan. This treasure on her body was very likely given to her by that youth named Lin Yuan. Or to be more precise, it was given by the mysterious titled Douluo teacher behind Lin Yuan. Only something from a titled Douluo could hide from the detection of other titled Douluo. However, Tang Hao did not know that his current act of releasing mental force to investigate Xiao Wu had already violated a major taboo. Tang Hao's sudden appearance at Heaven Do Royal Academy and this subtle mental fluctuation had clearly caught Zhao Yun's attention. In fact, if Tang Hao had merely remained in hiding without using mental force to conduct a forced investigation, even Zhao Yun might not have necessarily sensed his presence without intentionally conducting a large-scale search. But Tang Hao's mistake was using mental force, and his target just happened to be Xiao Wu. Although Zhao Yun's primary duty was to personally protect his lord, Lin Yuan. Xiao Wu and Lin Yuan had a very deep relationship, and she was even a sworn younger sister acknowledged by Lin Yuan himself. While Zhao Yun could not stay by Xiao Wu's side every second of the day. According to Lin Yuan's previous instructions, to be safe, Zhao Yun had long since left a secret mental imprint on Xiao Wu. Should Xiao Wu face any danger or be maliciously locked onto by powerful mental force. Through this imprint, Zhao Yun would notice immediately and appear with the greatest speed. The moment Tang Hao's mental force touched the dormitory building, Zhao Yun instantly sensed the presence of this uninvited guest. With a flash of his body, he appeared directly inside Lin Yuan's room. My lord. Zhao Yun knelt on one knee and reported with a cold expression, a suspicious individual has appeared around young Miss Xiao Wu's dormitory. The person released mental force and seems to intend her harm. Shall we take action immediately? Upon hearing this report, Lin Yuan already had a definitive answer in his heart regarding this sudden visitor. But to be sure, he still asked, Zilong, does this person have any distinct physical characteristics? Zhao Yun recalled the images fed back by his mental force and spoke truthfully. In response to my lord, this person is wearing a voluminous black cloak, wrapping himself tightly. Furthermore, his face looks very weathered, with a stubbly beard, and he appears rather unkempt. Hearing this description, Lin Yuan sneered inwardly. Although Tang Hao was very competent in his methods of concealment, he was, after all, an attack system expert, not an agility attack system titled Douluo like Gui Mei who specialized in stealth and assassination. And Zhao Yun was now a top-tier powerhouse possessing dual soul cores of lightning and mental force. His mental perception had reached an inconceivable level. Therefore, Zhao Yun could easily see through Tang Hao's supposedly perfect disguise and physical features from quite a distance. Hearing this, Lin Yuan stood up, a trace of coldness flashing in his eyes as he said calmly, there aren't many titled Douluo on the entire continent who fit such a scruffy image. That person is undoubtedly Tang Hao. Lin Yuan looked at Zhao Yun and issued an order, Zilong, go there immediately and give him a warning. Give him a bit of a lesson so that he never dares to covet Xiao Wu's spirit ring and spirit bone again. Zhao Yun shook his spear, cupped his hands, and said deeply, by your command, my lord. Then, Zhao Yun's figure flickered and vanished in a burst of silver lightning. On the large tree outside the girls' dormitory. Tang Hao was about to move closer to further investigate Xiao Wu's specific situation. Suddenly, the hair on his body stood on end, and a sense of fatal crisis instantly enveloped him. Who is it? Tang Hao was startled. He never expected that he would be discovered without any prior warning. In the next second, a silver light flashed, and a tall, straight figure instantly appeared in midair less than 10 meters away from Tang Hao. Zhao Yun held the dragon-gallant bright silver spear, his white robe snapping in the night wind. Tang Hao's gaze beneath the black robe became extremely grim as he stared fixedly at the handsome warrior who had appeared out of thin air. You are Lin Yuan's teacher. Chapter 159, Tang Hao vs. Zhao Yun. Are you Lin Yuan's teacher? Tang Hao asked in a low voice, secretly clenching his fists. Tang Hao was currently using his heart to sense the aura fluctuations emanating from Zhao Yun, hoping to determine his approximate strength. However, to his horror, he couldn't see through Zhao Yun's strength at all. Zhao Yun held his silver spear, its tip pointing diagonally at the ground, and looked at Tang Hao with cold eyes, saying indifferently, Your Excellency, this is not a place for you to be. If you retreat now, I can spare your life. Otherwise, don't blame the spear in my hand for being merciless. These words were extremely domineering, even carrying a condescending tone of scrutiny. And as the clear sky Douluo who had once hammered the Supreme Pontiff, how could Tang Hao be intimidated by a few words from Zhao Yun? He was still very confident in his own strength. Although he now carried old injuries from Spirit Hall, preventing him from prolonged combat. He was still a level 95 peak titled Douluo. Moreover, he was a ruthless individual who mastered the Great Sumeru Hammer and the Ring Explosion Ultimate Technique. In Tang Hao's view, even if he couldn't unleash his full strength from his prime, as long as the opponent wasn't a super Douluo above level 97, he could definitely handle a few exchanges with the clear sky hammer's dominance. Even if he couldn't win and had to escape, it wouldn't be a big problem. What a big mouth. Tang Hao snorted coldly, his eyes erupting with strong battle intent. Who exactly is your excellency? Most of the famous titled Douluo on this continent whose names are known, Tang has dealt with, or at least knows their background. But why have I never seen someone like you? Tang Hao took a step forward, his aura continuously rising. You want me, Clear Sky Douluo, to retreat with just one sentence. You're really not putting me, Tang, in your eyes. As soon as his voice fell, a gigantic scarlet iron hammer appeared in Tang Hao's hand. Clear Sky Hammer. Immediately after, 9 brilliant spirit rings emerged sequentially beneath Tang Hao. 2 yellow, 2 purple, 4 black, 1 red. All 9 spirit rings pulsed up and down, especially the last blood red 100,000-year spirit ring, which emitted a heart-palpitating red glow. Tang Hao stood proudly, pointing the Clear Sky Hammer at Zhao Yun, and continued, enough talk. Let the Clear Sky Hammer in my hand test your excellency's brilliant moves. However, facing Tang Hao's imposing stance, Zhao Yun merely let out a disdainful sneer. He didn't take Tang Hao's threat seriously at all. Instead, his gaze swept over the 9 spirit rings on Tang Hao's body, and he shook his head helplessly. I really don't know where you get your confidence from. Zhao Yun mocked indifferently. Your spirit ring configuration is a bit too trashy, isn't it? Tang Hao was slightly stunned upon hearing this. Trashy. He was very proud of his spirit ring configuration. This was the most standard top configuration among all known spirit masters on the Douluo Continent. Unless it was a freak with twin spirits like Supreme Pontiff Bibi Dong of Spirit Hall. Or a peerless expert like Jian Daliu who had undergone a divine examination and received a year limit increase. Otherwise, his configuration with a 100,000-year spirit ring was the highest ceiling in the spirit master's world. But then, when Tang Hao raised his head and saw the spirit ring slowly rising from beneath Zhao Yun's feet, his heart instantly sank to rock bottom. How is this possible? Tang Hao exclaimed in shock, even the hand holding the Clear Sky Hammer trembled violently. Beneath Zhao Yun's feet, 9 spirit rings rose. 7 black, 2 red. Tang Hao's heart was in turmoil, and his back was instantly drenched in cold sweat. He frantically speculated in his mind, this mysterious expert must have participated in the divine examination of a certain divinity. Or he was the high priest under a certain divinity. Otherwise, how could he possess such a monstrous spirit ring configuration? But before Tang Hao could think further, Zhao Yun's attack struck like thunder. Third spirit ability, Thunder 100 birds facing the phoenix spear. Zhao Yun held nothing back, and the dragon gallant bright silver spear in his hand instantly transformed into a sky full of spear shadows. Accompanied by deafening thunder, countless silver birds condensed from lightning overwhelmingly enveloped Tang Hao. Not good. Tang Hao felt the world-destroying killing intent and could only brace himself for battle. 7th spirit ability, Clear Sky Avatar. Tang Hao roared, and the Clear Sky Hammer in his hand instantly swelled against the wind, transforming into a colossal red hammer resembling a mountain. He wielded the massive Clear Sky Hammer, attempting to smash those lightning birds with pure force. Boom, boom, boom. Violent collision sounds exploded in the night sky. However, after only a few exchanges, Tang Hao despairingly discovered that his proud strength was simply vulnerable before the opponent. Moreover, from the terrifying aura unreservedly emanating from Zhao Yun, Tang Hao roughly deduced his strength. Super Douluo. This person in front of him was definitely a level 99 Super Douluo. Facing an existence of this level, he simply couldn't win. And now, he had been firmly locked down by Zhao Yun's mental force. Even if he wanted to run, he couldn't. What was even more critical was that the sound of their battle was growing louder. It wouldn't be long before it attracted the 3 committee members of Heaven Do Royal Academy, and even the Imperial City's Imperial Guards and people from Spirit Hall. Once surrounded, he would truly have no wings to escape. Tang Hao. Zhao Yun held his long spear and coldly snorted from above. Today, you will leave your life here. Tang Hao wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, a trace of wild ferocity flashed in his eyes, and he sneered, want to kill me? It's not that easy. Although I don't know how you perfectly hid Xiao Wu's spirit beast aura. But don't think I don't know your dirty intentions. Tang Hao gasped for breath, staring fiercely at Zhao Yun. The reason you went to such great lengths to keep this 100,000-year spirit beast, and even send you to protect her. Isn't it precisely so that once she grows fat, she can become a spirit ring and spirit bone for your precious disciple Lin Yuan? Hearing such self-serving remarks, Zhao Yun was so angry he laughed, his eyes full of disdain. Hey, what a pathetic clown. Do you think all spirit masters in the world are as hypocritical and shameless as you? Zhao Yun pointed his long spear. That 100,000-year red spirit ring on you, was it also obtained by playing the emotional card back then? Upon hearing this, Tang Hao's face instantly turned pale, and he roared furiously, shut up. What nonsense are you talking about? Tang Hao was terrified. He didn't know how Zhao Yun knew the hidden details of that incident back then. But he absolutely could not admit that the tragedy of Yun's sacrifice back then had his secret machinations and calculations involved. Chapter 160, Peerless Might. Zhao Yun severs Tang Hao's right arm. A flash of ruthless determination crossed Tang Hao's eyes. He could no longer care about his internal injuries. You forced my hand. Ring explosion. Great Sumeru hammer. Tang Hao roared, and the first 6 spirit rings on his body exploded instantly. The violent power of the spirit rings turned into a wave of destructive energy, madly surging into the Clear Sky Hammer in his hand. At this moment, Tang Hao's aura briefly broke through the limit, reaching an extremely terrifying height. But he didn't unleash this life-risking strike to face Zhao Yun. Instead, he suddenly turned around, swinging the Clear Sky Hammer radiating a destructive red light, and fiercely attacked the nearby female dormitory building. Besieging way to rescue Zhao. Since Zhao Yun came to protect Xiao Wu, then he couldn't possibly stand by and watch the female dormitory building where Xiao Wu was located be smashed into ruins by this hammer. As long as Zhao Yun went to save her, Tang Hao would take the opportunity to escape at his fastest speed. Facing this world-destroying hammer strike aimed at the dormitory building, Zhao Yun's eyes narrowed. Though angry, he didn't hesitate for a moment. He had no way to pursue Tang Hao and could only forcibly interrupt his offensive. 8th spirit ability, immovable as a mountain. Zhao Yun's figure flashed, blocking the front of the dormitory building, and the spear in his hand was suddenly thrust into the ground. A massive, invisible barrier condensed from silver lightning and protective aura instantly rose. Boom. The terrifying power of the great Sumeru hammer slammed heavily into the defensive barrier, erupting in a deafening, earth-shattering roar. However, Tang Hao had ultimately underestimated the true strength of a level 99 Super Douluo. The great Sumeru hammer he unleashed by exploding his first 6 rings, though grand in scale, had a power at most comparable to the full strength strike of a level 96 Super Douluo. And a mere level 96 Super Duoluo's attack, in front of the dual-core level 99 Super Douluo Zhao Yun, was simply not enough to look at. Therefore, while Zhao Yun held up the absolute defensive barrier, he actually had the spare energy to change his move. With a flick of his wrist, his spear moved like a dragon, forcibly separating a solid silver spear phantom from the defensive barrier. This spear phantom was like a bolt of lightning piercing the night sky, carrying a sharp edge that could penetrate everything, and attack Tang Hao, who had already taken the chance to flee hundreds of meters away, with incredible speed. The violent shockwaves swept through the surroundings outside the defensive barrier, sending sand and stones flying and snapping trees, yet it failed to shake Zhao Yun's defense in the slightest. Just as Tang Hao expected, he would not allow the female dormitory and Xiao Wu inside to be affected in the least. After Zhao Yun steadily blocked this great Sumeru hammer attack and the surrounding dust gradually dispersed. Zhao Yun's figure appeared like Gui Mei hundreds of meters away, at the exact spot where Tang Hao had just been hit by his spear phantom. However, only a shocking pool of blood remained on the spot, and in the center of the blood, a thick severed arm had fallen. It was a right arm severed at the shoulder. It was Tang Hao's right arm. As for Tang Hao himself, he had already vanished without a trace under the cover of the night. Zhao Yun put away the dragon-gallant bright silver spear and looked coldly in the direction Tang Hao had fled. He spat hard on the ground, his eyes full of disdain and contempt for such behavior. The dignified clear sky Douluo has actually stooped to the point of attacking innocent people to gain a chance to escape. This person is truly shameless. Then, Zhao Yun bent down, picked up the severed arm Tang Hao left behind, and stored it in his spirit tool. Within his perception, he clearly sensed that there was actually a high-quality spirit bone within this right arm. Having lost this right arm fused with a high-grade spirit bone, Tang Hao's strength would surely suffer a devastating blow. His cultivation would likely drop directly from the titled Douluo realm to the spirit Douluo realm. The pain of the severed arm, combined with the drop in realm, could be considered a significant lesson for this shameless fellow. And the brief but extremely terrifying collision between Zhao Yun and Tang Hao. The earth-shattering roar and violent spirit power fluctuations quickly attracted the attention of others within the Heaven Do Royal Academy. Especially some female students in the female dormitory. They were startled awake by the loud noise and poked their heads out of the windows one after another, their eyes bleary yet filled with terror as they tried to see what had happened. However, with their level generally being only that of a spirit grandmaster or spirit elder, how could they possibly see Zhao Yun's figure high in the sky in the dark of night? They could only see the lingering glow of lightning in the distant sky. At this time, Zhao Yun, having completed his task, had already concealed his aura and appeared unnoticed inside the dormitory room where Xiao Wu was. Xiao Wu had also been startled by the commotion outside just now and was preparing to go out and check. Looking at Zhao Yun who suddenly appeared in the room, Xiao Wu was first startled, then asked curiously, "Uncle Zhao, why are you here? Did something happen outside just now?" Zhao Yun looked at Xiao Wu, a gentle smile appearing on his stern face. Young Miss Xiao Wu was startled. Zhao Yun said in a calm tone, "Just now, a small-time crook at the titled Douluo level tried to sneak into the academy to harm you. But now, that person has been driven away by me. Furthermore, I conveniently severed his right arm as punishment. Presumably, after this painful lesson, your safety should no longer be threatened by that person." Hearing this, Xiao Wu suddenly gasped. A titled Douluo. And he even had an arm severed by Uncle Zhao before fleeing. Fortunately, Lin Yuan's teacher was here, otherwise she would have been in danger. And the only one who could have designs on her would be Tang Hao. Because of her spirit beast identity, the only titled Douluo she currently knew of was Tang Hao. The huge commotion here naturally also alerted the three committee members responsible for the daily management of the academy. Meng Chenji, Bai Baoshan, and Jilin, the three spirit Douluos, were rushing towards the back mountain in a hurry, preparing to investigate the situation. In the shadows, Zhao Yun directly condensed his voice into a line and transmitted it to the three of them. Committee members, a titled Douluo of unknown origin suddenly launched an attack on the academy. He has now been driven away by me, and the crisis is resolved. You don't need to worry, just reassure the students. Hearing this, Meng Chenji and the other two, who were hurrying along, stopped abruptly, their faces turning pale with shock. The three of them looked at each other, seeing deep shock in each other's eyes. So late at night, a powerhouse at the titled Douluo level actually tried to attack a female dormitory. And this matter actually alerted the mysterious teacher behind Lin Yuan. Soon, these three old foxes, who had lived for half a lifetime, connected the key points. The only one in that female dormitory building who could make Lin Yuan's teacher personally take action to protect was Xiao Wu, who was extremely close to Lin Yuan. P.S. Please vote, please keep reading tilde. Chapter 161, A Stray Dog, perhaps it's time to return to the sect. Since the three of them had already learned from Zhao Yun what had happened and confirmed the danger was over. They immediately turned around, quickly dispersed the faculty and staff who had gathered to investigate, and sealed off the information. Meanwhile, just a few minutes earlier. When Tang Hao swung that hammer, a sliver of hope still lingered in his heart. He thought that by forcibly using Ring Explosion and the Great Sumeru Hammer, disregarding his hidden injuries, he could perfectly restrict Zhao Yun's movements and force him to defend. This would buy him some precious time to escape calmly. However, he never imagined that the foundation of Zhao Yun, a super Douluo, would be so terrifying. While withstanding the Great Sumeru Hammer head-on, Zhao Yun was actually capable of dividing his attention. He separated a strand of incredibly condensed thunderous spear shadow to launch a long-range, lethal attack against him. Even though Tang Hao sensed the danger while fleeing and hastily turned to block it. His proud protective aura was like paper before that spear shadow. His right shoulder was ruthlessly pierced through by that silver spear shadow. Blood gushed wildly as his entire right arm, fused with the spirit bone, was severed cleanly at the root and fell to the ground. Excruciating pain pierced his heart. But Tang Hao had no time to retrieve his severed arm, he dared not even pause for an instant. Because he understood clearly. If Zhao Yun could launch such a precise and terrifying attack from such a distance, then it meant Zhao Yun must have easily blocked his Great Sumeru Hammer attack and remained unscathed. If he dared to stop and pick up his arm, Zhao Yun's spear tip would pierce not his arm, but his throat in the next second. He had to flee at his fastest speed, it was his only chance to survive. Losing a right arm fused with a spirit bone was an extremely heavy price. Tang Hao could clearly feel his overall spirit power limit plummeting precipitously. It had dropped a full 10 levels. He had fallen from a 95th level titled Douluo directly to the 85th level spirit Douluo realm. But because he had just lost the arm, his body's instincts and remaining spirit power were still active. So his escape speed did not immediately slow down, barely maintaining a speed above that of a titled Douluo for a short time. During this golden time of escape, Tang Hao, like a stray dog, frantically overdrew and consumed his spirit power. He recklessly accelerated his flight until his spirit power and physical strength were nearly depleted. Only then did he finally dare to stop and rest in a relatively hidden, deserted, and dilapidated temple. The moment he stopped, Tang Hao couldn't help but vomit a large mouthful of black blood mixed with fragments of internal organs. Tang Hao's condition at this moment was far from good, one could even say it was pitiful. With his only remaining left hand, he calmly applied every usable healing medicine from his spirit tool onto the wound of his severed arm. Those precious oral healing medicines were swallowed one after another as if they cost nothing. Only after the medicinal effects took hold did he barely manage to suppress the hidden injuries within his body, which were on the verge of erupting completely due to the forced ring explosion. Leaning against the cold wall of the broken temple, Tang Hao's face was as pale as paper, looking utterly dreadful. This time, he had truly tried to steal a chicken only to lose the rice, suffering a double loss. He originally thought that with the long-inherited secret technique of ring explosion from the Clear Sky sect, combined with the overbearing power of the Great Sumeru Hammer, even if he couldn't be invincible, he would at least have the power to strike once against a 99th level Super Douluo by catching them off guard and retreat unscathed. But now it seemed that he, Tang Hao, had been too narrow-minded and arrogant. Although his Great Sumeru Hammer this time only exploded the first 6 rings, not his peak full power of exploding all 9 rings. From Zhao Yun's effortless attack just now, he could clearly sense that. Even if he had risked his life today and exploded all 9 rings, Zhao Yun would still have handled his desperate attack with ease, even counter-killing him unscathed. This was the immense, chasm-like gap between a Super Douluo and an ordinary titled Douluo. At this moment, having experienced a brush with death and a crushing defeat, a sudden clarity dawned upon Tang Hao. He could also somewhat understand why, back when the Clear Sky sect was at its peak, facing the Spirit Hall's forceful coercion, the sect elders chose without hesitation to back down, seal the sect, and retreat from the world. And why his father, the former Clear Sky sect master, ultimately died depressed and regretful from illness. It was because the Spirit Hall was truly far too powerful. This power wasn't about the sheer number of low-level spirit masters, but the absolute crushing superiority of top-tier combat strength. Not to mention the title Douluos the Spirit Hall had on the surface. Just the High Priest of the Hall of Worship alone, the 99th level Super Douluo Tian Daoliu. He alone could probably have raised the entire Clear Sky sect of that era to the ground. The dignity of a Super Douluo brooks no provocation. Cough, cough. Tang Hao coughed up another mouthful of blood and looked down at his empty right shoulder. Now, having lost his right arm and permanently damaged his strength, falling to the Spirit Douluo level, he clearly could no longer protect Tang San from the shadows as effectively as before. Perhaps, I should return to the sect. A flicker of complexity and resolve passed through Tang Hao's turbid eyes. To plead guilty to the sect, and then inform the sect's higher-ups of Little San's existence. Tang Hao pondered. The sect had always yearned to return to its peak, if they knew Little San possessed the 1 in 10 million twin spirits and the talent of innate full spirit power. Then, for the sake of this talent that could lead the Clear Sky sect to revival, even if the elders hated him and refused to forgive the grave wrongs he committed against the sect back then. Perhaps, for the future of the sect, they might accept Little San's return to his ancestral roots. Actually, if possible. Tang Hao originally planned to wait until Tang San's cultivation was higher, at least reaching the Spirit King or Spirit Emperor realm. When he had the ability to protect himself and demonstrated sufficient value, then he would bring his son back to the Clear Sky sect, letting his son use his own strength to atone for his father's sins to the sect and wash away the shame. But plans could not keep up with changes. With his current crippled body and his mere 85th level cultivation, coupled with losing a top-quality right arm bone fused for many years, around 80,000 years old, his physical foundation was severely damaged. His physical constitution could no longer withstand the backlash from ring explosion at all. Now, even if he risked his life to perform ring explosion, he estimated he could at most explode the first 4 rings, those lower-tier 100-year and 1,000-year spirit rings. Exploding such low-level spirit rings wouldn't significantly boost his combat power. At best, it would barely push him to the threshold of a titled Douluo. Yet the side effects would be enormous. This approach offered more disadvantages than benefits, a losing proposition. Chapter 162. Keeping Tang Hao to catch the big fish. Is this kind of battle record even reasonable? No, I can't return to the sect in this wretched state. Not only would I fail to protect Little San, I might not even be allowed past the mountain gate. Tang Hao took a deep breath, forcing himself to calm down. He quickly pondered his options in his mind. And if he remembered correctly, his sister, Tang Yuehua, should currently be serving as the pavilion master within Heaven Do City. Perhaps I should find a time to go see her. Through Yuehua's channels, I can first test the sect's stance before making any plans. Fortunately, Heaven Do Royal Academy was built on a mountain outside the city, not within Heaven Do City itself. The Moon Pavilion, however, was located in a bustling area inside the city, a full several dozen kilometers away from the academy. Presumably, unless Lin Yuan's master deliberately conducted a wide-range search, he shouldn't be able to sense the situation within the city. Meanwhile, inside Lin Yuan's dormitory at Heaven Do Royal Academy, a flash of silver light, and Zhao Yun's figure silently appeared in the center of the room. My lord, I have driven back Tang Hao and taught him a lesson. Zhao Yun knelt on one knee, reporting respectfully to Lin Yuan. Then, with a flick of his wrist, Zhao Yun retrieved Tang Hao's severed hand from his spirit tool. The severed arm still carried faint spirit power fluctuations, the blood already dried. Zhao Yun did not directly hand the bloody object to Lin Yuan. Instead, he circulated the spirit power within his body. Using his spirit power, he carefully guided it through the right arm, meticulously separating flesh and blood. Moments later, an 80,000-year right arm bone, emitting a profound black light, was extracted intact by his spirit power. Looking at the severed arm and that spirit bone, Lin Yuan's expression remained utterly calm. He was not the least bit surprised. Given Zhao Yun's terrifying strength as a 99th level dual core super Douluo, even if Tang Hao tried to flee, it was absolutely impossible for him to escape without paying a grievous price. This 80,000-year spirit bone was the price. Zhao Yun disposed of the severed arm and respectfully handed the 80,000-year spirit bone to Lin Yuan. After completing this, Zhao Yun stood in place, his brow slightly furrowed as if hesitating about something. But in the end, he couldn't resist voicing the doubt in his heart. My lord, there's one thing your subordinate does not understand. Why did you only order me to teach Tang Hao a lesson, to sever one of his arms, instead of directly taking his life? In Zhao Yun's view, tonight's battle was completely a one-sided suppression. With his current terrifying strength, even if Tang Hao went all out, using ring explosion on all 9 rings to unleash the Great Sumeru Hammer, it would absolutely be unable to breach his, immovable as a mountain absolute defense. Because even if Tang Hao exerted his full power, exhausting every means at his disposal, his hammer strike could at most unleash an attack equivalent to the full force strike of a 97th level peak Super Douluo. And he, Zhao Yun, was a genuine 99th level Super Douluo. Moreover, he possessed dual spirit cores of lightning and spirit, with a foundation so profound it was incomparable to ordinary Super Douluos. No matter how you look at it, when facing Tang Hao, he held an absolute, all-around advantage. Earlier, while dealing with Tang Hao, Zhao Yun even felt a sense of ease, like a cat toying with a mouse. The only unforeseen variable was that scoundrel Tang Hao, in his desperation to escape, would sink so low as to harm innocent female students. To this, Zhao Yun, a man of honor and integrity throughout his life, felt utter contempt. If the Lord had issued a kill order, he definitely could have blocked the attack and simultaneously blown Tang Hao's head off with a single spear thrust when he attacked the dormitory. Lin Yuan looked at the 80,000-year spirit bone in his hand, a slight curve forming at the corner of his mouth. He had long anticipated Zhao Yun's question and said calmly, Zilong, do you think killing Tang Hao now would bring us the greatest benefit? Lin Yuan shook his head and continued, letting him die now is too early. I still want to use him as bait to lure out the Clear Sky sect, which has been hiding in the shadows all along. Moreover, Tang Hao is connected to a wide range of forces. Through him, we can draw out all those who harbor hostility towards us, all potential enemies, one by one. Once they are all gathered together, we can then wipe them out in one fell swoop. This is called casting a long line to catch a big fish. Also called, a cat toying with a mouse. With Zhao Yun present, any trick Tang Hao tries is just clownery. Any scheme or conspiracy is nothing to fear in the face of absolute strength. Hearing his lord's far-sighted words, Zhao Yun suddenly understood. The lord is wise. However, Lin Yuan's plans extended far beyond this. There was another extremely crucial point he had not explicitly told Zhao Yun. That was, Tang Hao possessed the Slaughter God domain. And the Slaughter God domain was actually formed from a wisp of the Asura God's divine force. Lin Yuan had always harbored a bold speculation and a desire to test an idea. He wanted to know, through Zhao Yun's utterly one-sided suppression of Tang Hao tonight, even driving him into a corner. Would such an extreme life and death crisis allow the lofty Asura God to sense it? Would the Asura God, seeing the father of his chosen inheritor suffer a setback, secretly grant Tang Hao some assistance? Although the Asura God could not descend to the lower realm, he could still provide some borderline help through the Slaughter God domain, right? Lin Yuan had always held great suspicion regarding the battle Tang Hao fought years ago in the original work. Back then, when Tang Hao was being pursued by the elite forces of the Spirit Hall, how could he, a newly breakthrough 90-level titled Douluo, possibly have successfully escaped from the Spirit Hall's dragnet? It was simply unbelievable. One must know, how luxurious was the lineup of those who participated in that spirit hunting operation. Apart from Qian Zunji, the 95th level titled Douluo Supreme Pontiff, personally leading the team. There were also Chrysanthemum Douluo and Ghost Douluo, two super powerful individuals possessing the polar restrained domain spirit fusion skill. Furthermore, there were two other unknown Spirit Hall titled Douluo elders accompanying them. A total of 5 titled Douluos. And the result? Those two unknown titled Douluos actually died on the spot due to Tang Hao's ring explosion and Great Sumeru Hammer. Qian Zunji was severely injured, and Chrysanthemum and Ghost Douluos were also wounded. If one were to say there wasn't some trickery from the God realm behind Tang Hao, no divine force secretly intervening. Lin Yuan would never believe it even if beaten to death. Tang Hao, a newcomer who had just entered the titled rank, fought 1 against 5, and actually managed to kill 2 unknown titled Douluos. If you count the severely injured Qian Zunji, then it could barely be considered taking out 3. Not to mention, the Spirit Hall's team also had a bunch of Spirit Douluos and Spirit Saints assisting at the time. Is this kind of battle record even reasonable? Now, let's compare it to the plot of the late stage in the original work. How did Sword Douluo Chenshin and Yu Yuanjun of the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan perform when facing the spirit hunting operation launched by the Spirit Hall? Chapter 163, both Super Douluos, who is stronger? Chenshin is at the peak of level 96 and possesses the world's #1 offensive spirit. Faced with a siege from several titled Douluos of Spirit Hall, he exhausted all his strength just to heavily injure them and force them to retreat. And he himself paid the painful price of losing an arm. Yu Yuanjun, as the sect master of the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon sect, relied on dragon transformation but only managed to kill 1 titled Douluo before dying of exhaustion himself. With the battle records of these two top-tier powerhouses as a comparison, one can clearly see just how ridiculous and bizarre Tang Hao's record in that battle years ago truly was. Therefore, Lin Yuan having Zhao Yun fight Tang Hao tonight was actually a way to test him and see if Tang Hao had some sort of trump card. Otherwise, he could have held Zhao Yun back for a while. Since Tang Hao had only just appeared and didn't fully understand the situation, it was impossible for him to rashly move against Xiao Wu. Meanwhile, in the chat group that only the girls could see, messages were scrolling frantically. Xiao Wu, still shaken, immediately recounted what she had just experienced in the group. Bunny who loves Tonghulu, holy crap, sisters, I was scared to death just now. Bunny who loves Tonghulu, that Tang Hao actually sneaked into our Heaven Do Royal Academy in the middle of the night. Bunny who loves Tonghulu, he even released his mental force to lock onto my dormitory. Fortunately, brother's teacher discovered him in time and fought him off. Seeing Xiao Wu's message, several girls living in the same dormitory building chimed in one after another. Ning Rongrong, Du Guyan, and Yi Lingling had all been startled by the massive commotion just now. They were also in the female dormitory, and Ning Rongrong's room was right next door to Xiao Wu's. 7 Treasure's little rich girl, yeah, I heard it too. There was such a huge commotion outside, it sounded like someone was fighting a great battle in the sky with thunder booming. 7 Treasure's little rich girl, so it was that Tang Hao. Xiao Wu, are you hurt? I want to live past 30, that Tang Hao has too much nerve, actually daring to come and run wild at the Royal Academy. Facing her sister's concern, Xiao Wu felt a warmth in her heart. Bunny who loves Tonghulu, don't worry, luckily Uncle Zhao Yun appeared in time and beat Tang Hao back. Bunny who loves Tonghulu, however, that Tang Hao is truly shameless to the extreme. Bunny who loves Tonghulu, when he realized he was no match for Uncle Zhao Yun, he actually grew desperate and chose Ring Explosion, recklessly launching an attack at our dormitory building. Bunny who loves Tonghulu, he wanted to use that to force Uncle Zhao Yun to fall back and save us so he could take the chance to escape. When the girls in the group saw this, they were instantly in an uproar, all cursing Tang Hao for being shameless. But Xiao Wu's next words made them feel incredibly vindicated. Bunny who loves Tonghulu, but even though he was that despicable, it seems he didn't get away completely. Bunny who loves Tonghulu, Uncle Zhao Yun threw a spear across the distance and severed his right arm. Blood was spilled all over the place. Looking at Xiao Wu's description in the group, Qian Runshui, far away in the Crown Prince's mansion, frowned slightly. She keenly sensed something in this battle that didn't quite fit common sense. I really don't swing that way. Wait, if I remember correctly, this teacher of Lin Yuan's should be a level 99 Super Douluo, right? I really don't swing that way. Since a Super Douluo took action, how could he still let Tang Hao escape? Qian Runshui quickly analyzed the gap in combat power between the two sides. I really don't swing that way, based on the inferences from the content in Lin Yuan's diary earlier. I really don't swing that way. Tang Hao has internal injuries, and his current spirit power is at most level 95, maybe even less. I really don't swing that way, yet Zhao Yan only ended up severing one of Tang Hao's arms. I really don't swing that way, why do I feel? Zhao Yan is suspected of intentionally going easy on him. As the granddaughter of Spirit Hall's High Priest Qian Daoliu, Qian Runshui knew better than anyone just how powerful the destructive strength of a true level 99 Super Douluo was. That was an absolute chasm that a Super Douluo couldn't bridge even by risking their life. Qian Runshui's doubt also piqued the curiosity of the other newcomers in the group. Especially Ji Yuina and Bai Ji, who had just joined the chat. Emerald Guardian, what exactly is the background of this Super Douluo teacher of Lin Yuan's? Emerald Guardian, is he also a bodyguard rewarded to him by the system? Emerald Guardian, or is he a hidden powerhouse he knew from the human world before? The Ice Empress from the extreme north followed up, pointing out the suspicious points. Don't want to become an ice sculptor, it's unlikely he met him in reality. Don't want to become an ice sculptor. According to the content in Lin Yuan's diary, in the current human world, those whose strength has reached the level of a Super Douluo should only be Qian Daoliu and Bo Saishi. Don't want to become an ice sculptor. As for that Tang Chen who went to Slaughter City and disappeared, let's not mention him. Don't want to become an ice sculptor. This powerhouse named Zhao Yun seems to have appeared out of thin air. Facing the guesses of the big shots, Xiao Wu thought for a moment and shared the deduction she and her sisters usually made. Bunny who loves Tang Hulu. Actually, we've discussed this privately. Uncle Zhao Yun was likely issued to brother by the system as an extremely rare reward. Bunny who loves Tang Hulu. However, he is completely different from a normal puppet. He seems to have fully independent human emotions and thoughts. Bunny who loves Tang Hulu. Moreover, he is extremely loyal to brother, a loyalty that is engraved in his bones. Bunny who loves Tang Hulu. So, on the surface, to deceive others, he claims to be brother's teacher. Bunny who loves Tang Hulu, but in reality, in private, he should be considered brother's absolutely obedient subordinate. Of course, what Xiao Wu said in the group was actually just the private speculation of her, Ning Rongrong, and Du Guyan. After all, Lin Yuan had never explicitly mentioned Zhao Yun's true origin in his diary. At this time, the sea witch far away on Sea God Island couldn't help but chime in. Daughter of the Great Sea, wow, even a Super Douluo can be a subordinate. This system is too insane. Daughter of the Great Sea, then I'm a bit curious, since this Zhao Yun is also a level 99 Super Douluo. Daughter of the Great Sea, if he were compared to Spirit Hall's Qian Daoliu and our Sea God Island's High Priest, who would be stronger? This question could be said to have voiced the curiosity in everyone's hearts. Both Super Douluos, who is stronger? Chapter 164, Tang Yuehua's feelings, the disappearing spirit fusion skill. However, Xiao Wu could only helplessly send a shrugging emoji. Bunny who loves Tang Hulu, I'm not too sure about that, they haven't actually fought. Bunny who loves Tang Hulu, I only know that Uncle Zhao Yun's spirit ring configuration is incredibly monstrous, with 7 black and 2 red rings. As for whether he has other trump cards, I have no idea at all. Seeing the words of 7 black and 2 red, the chat group fell into a brief, dead silence once again. This configuration indeed provided the capital to challenge the likes of Qian Daoliu and Bo Saishi. At this moment, in this bustling chat group, there was one person who remained silent throughout, not even daring to breathe loudly. That was Tang Yuehua, who had been lurking and monitoring the screen. At this time, Tang Yuehua's face was extremely unsightly, pale without a trace of color. Fine beads of cold sweat even continuously broke out on her smooth forehead, sliding down her cheeks. She never imagined this would happen. So late at night, her second brother would actually risk sneaking into the Heaven Do Royal Academy and even attempt to harm that girl named Xiao Wu. Then, what terrified her the most was her second brother had actually run into a peerless wall like Zhao Yun and even had his right arm forcibly severed. If she wasn't mistaken, the spirit bone on Tang Hao's right arm was no ordinary spirit bone. That was one of the 2 top-tier sect legacy spirit bones passed down by the Clear Sky sect. Its age was as high as 80,000 years. Once this top-quality right arm bone was lost, the damage to the body would be devastating. Tang Hao's cultivation would inevitably drop directly from the titled Douluo realm to that of a spirit Douluo. Second brother. Tang Yuehua bit her lip hard, her heart filled with worry. I wonder how your injuries are now. Can you still hold on? Tang Yuehua was anxious and wished she could immediately send someone to find Tang Hao's whereabouts. But she didn't dare to speak up and ask in the chat group right now. She only dared to silently watch the messages scrolling on the screen, her heart jumping in fear. She was afraid that if she spoke, even if she only showed a hint of sympathy for Tang Hao, the quick-witted women in the group would guess her real-life blood relation to Tang Hao. Once exposed, the consequences would be unimaginable. The reason she cared so much about Tang Hao's safety actually hid a secret unknown to others. That was, she had always harbored a forbidden feeling for her second brother that transcended the boundaries of siblings. In her heart, the clear sky Douluo of back then, who was full of high spirits and shook the world with a single hammer, was the flawless fearless hero of her dreams. This blind worship and adoration made her feel like a knife was twisting in her heart when she saw Tang Hao injured. And there were 2 main reasons why Tang Yuehua still held such beautiful illusions about Tang Hao until now. First, she was naturally deeply involved, her eyes blinded by her emotions. Second, it was because up until now, she hadn't finished reading all the contents of the diary Lin Yuan had written over the past 2 years. She had only picked out some recent fragments to read and was still ignorant of many secrets from the past. Therefore, she naturally didn't know how Tang Hao had plotted against Yin back then. She was even less aware that the second brother she regarded as a hero was actually a hypocrite who would use any means necessary for profit. It was foreseeable. Once Tang Yuehua slowly finished reading all those bloody details in the diary and learned the truth about the sacrifice back then, she would certainly have a brand new, subversive understanding of Tang Hao. By then, the filter in her heart would surely disappear completely. The next morning. Star Luo Empire, Star Luo Royal Academy, inside the high-level training grounds. Zhu Zuyun, wearing a set of extremely form-fitting black leather clothes that outlined her explosive figure, arrived at the training grounds as usual. Today was the day she was to conduct combat practice with Dai Wuxi and several other main partners of the Star Luo team. Just as she walked into the training grounds, Dai Wuxi and several team members were already waiting there. Zuyun, you're here. Seeing Zhu Zuyun's enchanting figure, a flash of possessiveness crossed Dai Wuxi's eyes as he walked up to greet her with a smile. However, the moment Zhu Zuyun approached Dai Wuxi and the two were less than 2 meters apart, the smile on Dai Wuxi's face instantly froze, and his pupils shrank violently. Because he suddenly discovered in horror that his Evil Eyes White Tiger spirit had no reaction at all. One must know that a natural spirit attraction existed between the Evil Eyes White Tiger and the Hell Civet. As long as the two were close, that mysterious spirit resonance would automatically occur. This was the foundation for performing the spirit fusion skill, the Hell White Tiger. But now, that sensation had completely and utterly vanished. Dai Wuxi instantly panicked. He strode up to Zhu Zuyun and grabbed her arm tightly. Don't move. Dai Wuxi barked in a low voice, hurriedly injecting a strand of his spirit power into Zhu Zuyun's body, trying to forcibly trigger the spirit resonance. However, his spirit power was like a clay ox entering the sea. The Hell Civet spirit inside Zhu Zuyun's body emitted an extremely obvious sense of repulsion toward him. That resistance made Dai Wuxi feel as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. Dai Wuxi's expression became increasingly unsightly, turning so gloomy it looked as if it could drip water. What on earth is going on? Dai Wuxi stared into Zhu Zuyun's eyes, his voice carrying unmistakable horror and anger. Why, my spirit resonance with you, how could it have completely vanished? Facing Dai Wuxi's questioning, Zhu Zuyun sneered in her heart, even finding it incredibly satisfying. The spirit mutation brought by the 9-yin manual had indeed completely severed this damned shackle. But on the surface, she subtly and gently brushed away Dai Wuxi's overly forceful hand. She furrowed her beautiful brows, putting on a very innocent and bewildered look. I'm not too sure either. Zhu Zuyun bit her red lips and said somewhat hesitantly, it might be because I ran into a bit of trouble while cultivating alone last night. I don't know what happened, but my spirit suddenly underwent a spirit mutation. At this point, Zhu Zuyun intentionally paused, observing Dai Wuxi's expression. Then, she continued in a regretful tone, perhaps it was precisely because of this sudden spirit mutation that our spirit's compatibility was destroyed. That's why we can no longer produce resonance now. This means that in all probability, we will never be able to use that spirit fusion skill again. Seeing Dai Wuxi's face instantly turn as pale as paper, Zhu Zuyun pushed her acting to the limit. She put on a very troubled and desperate look, her eyes reddening as she looked at Dai Wuxi. Wuxi, what should we do now? P.S. Seeking recommendation votes, monthly votes, favorites, and follows tilde. Chapter 165, Dai Wuxi's Breakdown, the Angry Star Luo Emperor. You know the competition rules of our Star Luo imperial family better than I do. If the heirs of past generations cannot perform the Hell White Tiger, it is equivalent to losing their greatest trump card and deterrent. The two of us suddenly lost our spirit resonance. Zhu Zuyun deliberately lowered her voice and asked tentatively, then are we going to be forced to withdraw from the competition for the throne? Withdraw. These two words were like lighting the fuse of a powder keg, causing Dai Wuxi to break down instantly. Impossible, absolutely impossible. Dai Wuxi roared in a rage, his eyes bloodshot from extreme resentment. He clenched his fists tightly, his nails digging into his flesh. I must obtain the throne of this Star Luo Empire. No one should even think about making me withdraw. Even without the spirit fusion skill, I am still the strongest prince of Star Luo. Dai Wuxi's heart at this moment felt even worse than if he had swallowed a fly. How much effort and price had he paid for this throne? His hands were covered in blood. It was only with great difficulty that he had secretly plotted to kill the second brother, who posed the greatest threat to him. In the current Star Luo imperial family, among the adult princes, only he, Dai Wuxi, remained. Besides him, there was only the young third brother who hadn't made a name for himself yet, Dai Mubai. And Dai Mubai posed no threat to him at all. As long as he played it safe, the throne was in Dai Wuxi's bag. But, at this critical juncture, his and Zhu Zuyun's spirit fusion skill was ruined. Even more deadly was that Dai Mubai and the Zhu family's Zhu Zuqing had gotten engaged shortly after Zhu Zuqing's spirit awakening. Originally, in the normal timeline of the original work, Dai Mubai and Zhu Zuqing, this betrothed couple, were supposed to wait until many years later at the Heaven Do Empire's Shrek Academy for their first official meeting. But now, because of the massive butterfly effect brought about by Lin Yuan's diary copy, everything had changed. Because of the system's guaranteed reward, Zhu Zuqing's innate spirit power underwent a world-shaking change. She was no longer at innate rank 7 as in the original work, but had become innate rank 10. Once this news came out, the high-level officials of the entire Star Luo Empire were shaken, and the Zhu family regarded her as a precious treasure. And Dai Mubai, who was also in the Imperial Palace, was greatly curious when he heard that his never-before-met fiancé actually had innate full spirit power. Thus, under the deliberate arrangement and guidance of some people with ulterior motives in the palace, the young Dai Mubai went to the Zhu family ahead of schedule to meet the equally young Zhu Zuqing. That meeting's atmosphere seemed somewhat eerie. As a child, Zhu Zuqing had skin like snow and delicate features, looking just like a porcelain doll. She was very lovable. However, perhaps because Dai Mubai was more than 3 years older than Zhu Zuqing. Coupled with the imperial family's precocious education, Dai Mubai's mind was much more mature than the ignorant Zhu Zuqing's. More importantly, don't look at Dai Mubai's young age. He had long been frequenting brothels with some playboys in his daily life. His lifestyle could be described as, well, that, having already seen all kinds of charming and mature women. So, facing the currently completely undeveloped Zhu Zuqing, Dai Mubai really couldn't muster much romantic interest for the time being. After all, although Zhu Zuqing had a good foundation and was not bad looking, her figure was indeed average now, completely that of a little girl. And besides the lack of interest, Dai Mubai's feelings towards Zhu Zuqing even contained a trace of deep resentment. Because it was precisely because of Zhu Zuqing's revealed talent of innate full spirit power that he, who originally wanted to stay out of it, was once again pushed to the heart of the struggle. The rules of the Star Luo imperial family are cruel. The better Zhu Zuqing's talent, the greater the potential of their branch, and the greater the threat to Dai Wuxi. This resulted in Dai Mubai being forced into this life and death competition for the throne, even if he wanted to escape. With all these factors combined, his favorability and interest in Zhu Zuqing were naturally not particularly high. If he really cared that much about Zhu Zuqing, in the original work, he wouldn't have heartlessly left her alone to suffer in the Star Luo Empire. While he himself, like a coward, fled alone to the Heaven Do Empire to live a life of debauchery. Although his fiancée Zhu Zuqing's innate full spirit power surprised him. However, Dai Mubai still had no optimistic thoughts about his future, and was even filled with despair. The reason was simple, it was an insurmountable chasm. Dai Wuxi was a full 6 years older than him. This meant that Dai Wuxi had awakened his spirit and cultivated for 6 whole years before him. In the golden period of a spirit master's cultivation, a 6-year time difference was enough to create a spirit power gap of nearly 20 ranks. How could he, a 10-year-old child, compete for the throne with the already adult Dai Wuxi? Even if his talent was indeed a little bit better than Dai Wuxi's, what use was that? The competition for the throne in the Star Luo imperial family never looks at potential, it looks at solid combat power. Whoever has the harder fist can take a position. They don't care at all how heaven-defying your talent is, nor do they care if you are at a disadvantage because your age is too small. On that cruel arena, strength is everything. If you lose, there's a high probability you'll die. So, after seeing this desperate reality clearly, Dai Mubai's mentality could be said to have completely collapsed, and he directly chose to let himself go. Anyway, no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't beat that older brother who had cultivated 6 years longer than him. It would be better to take advantage of the fact that the imperial family hadn't sent him on life and death trials yet, and use his status as a prince to enjoy a luxurious life. Listening to music in brothels and drowning his sorrows in wine. Star Luo Empire, Imperial Study. The news that Zhu Zuyun and Dai Wuxi were unable to perform the spirit fusion skill quickly spread throughout the Star Luo Imperial family in a very short time. Dai Wuxi wanted to hide it, but how could such a thing be hidden? This was no small matter. It concerned the future succession of the Star Luo Empire's imperial power and the stability of the nation's foundation. After the Star Luo Emperor, Dai Yudian, learned of this, he was furious. He immediately issued an imperial decree, summoning Dai Wuxi, Zhu Zuyun, and the current Duke Zhu all to the imperial study. The air pressure in the imperial study was terrifyingly low. Dai Yudian looked at Dai Wuxi and Zhu Zuyun expressionlessly, his eyes cold and without a trace of warmth. Then, Dai Yudian turned his knife-sharp gaze toward the shivering Duke Zhu standing aside. Head of the Zhu family. Dai Yudian's voice was extremely low, filled with the terrifying pressure of a superior. Do you not intend to give us a reasonable explanation? Why did the spirit fusion skill of Zuyun and Wuxi suddenly disappear without any warning? Chapter 166. It's time to start a new alt. Being questioned so sternly by the Star Luo Emperor, the Duke Zhu, the biological father of Zhu Zuyun and Zhu Zuqing, was already dripping with cold sweat. He tremblingly raised his hand and frantically wiped the sweat from his forehead with his sleeve. At this moment, his expression was 100 times more bitter than if he had eaten raw cactus root. Please appease your wrath, your majesty. I really don't know what's going on. The Duke Zhu's voice was shaking violently. He was truly driven to the brink of madness by anxiety. Your majesty, please see clearly. Since the founding of the Star Luo Empire, my Zhu family and the imperial family have intermarried for generations. In these long years, this is the first ridiculous case in history. The Duke Zhu swallowed hard, enduring the immense pressure as he continued to explain in terror. Two people who originally had martial soul resonance have suddenly lost their connection. Such a thing that defies common sense has never been recorded even in the slightest in the records of my Zhu family. Hearing this pale and powerless defense from the Duke Zhu, Dai Yudian was clearly very dissatisfied. He was the ruler of a country. He didn't care about the process or those ethereal reasons. He only cared about the final result. Dai Yudian's eyes narrowed slightly, a glimmer of extremely dangerous cold light flashing in the depths of his gaze. He no longer paid attention to the Duke Zhu, but turned directly to the personal royal guard beside him and ordered in a deep voice. You, take men to the prince's mansion in the Zhu family immediately. Bring the third prince and the Zhu family's third young miss, Zhu Zuqing, to the imperial study at once. I want to see for myself if the spirit compatibility between the two of them has also disappeared. Dai Wuxi's face was extremely pale. He knew very well in his heart that his years of calculation and planning were completely finished. In the Star Luo Empire, the top-tier spirit fusion skill, Hell White Tiger, had always been the symbol of imperial legitimacy and absolute power. A prince without the Hell White Tiger as his strongest trump card would never be able to sit on that supreme imperial throne. Now, the spirit fusion skill between him and Zhu Zuyun had completely disappeared. Although the specific reason was not yet clear, it was obvious that this had become an irreversible situation. Dai Wuxi, the once most dazzling and popular first prince of the Star Luo Empire. At this moment, he had essentially lost his qualification as the successor to the Star Luo Great Emperor. A prince unable to perform the Hell White Tiger had lost his greatest utility to the cold and realistic Star Luo imperial family. Looking at the current structure of the Star Luo imperial family. Among the adult princes, the second prince had been eliminated, leaving only the two brothers. And now, only the third prince, Mubai, and Zuqing still possessed spirit compatibility. Under this cruel elimination mechanism, the two of them had logically become the final successors of the imperial bloodline. Dai Yudian sat on the dragon throne, his mind as clear as a mirror. No matter how profligate and playboy Mubai usually was, how much he frequented brothels, or even if he was suspected of giving up on himself and letting things rot. However, as long as the Hell White Tiger between him and Zuqing remained, he was currently the only successor to the Star Luo Empire. Nothing else could be allowed to go wrong with the two of them. Otherwise, who would serve as the successor of the Star Luo imperial family, which had passed down its legacy for 10,000 years? As the emperor of the Star Luo Empire, Dai Yudian would never place the future of the empire entirely on ethereal luck. Even if only Mubai and Zuqing were left with compatibility, he would not put all his eggs in one basket. At this moment, a very realistic and cold thought had already arisen in Dai Yudian's mind. It seemed it was time to start a new alt. Dai Yudian calculated silently in his heart. While he was still in his prime, fathering a few more exceptionally talented princes and training them anew might be the most stable way to break the deadlock. The reason why the Star Luo imperial family had always been able to suppress the Heaven Do imperial family in comprehensive national strength lay in two key points. First was their proud, top-tier spirit fusion skill, the Hell White Tiger. Second was that almost GU-like, extremely cruel imperial competition system. It was precisely because of this bloody competition system that every Star Luo great emperor in history had fought their way out of mountains of corpses and seas of blood as the strongest. But because of this, within the current massive imperial family, besides the Hell White Tiger combat power possessed by him and the Empress, among the princes, only the two brothers, Dai Wuxi and Mubai, remained. This was because the many princes of Star Luo had to unreservedly eliminate all their competitors before officially taking the throne. This elimination, at its lightest, involved crippling the opponent's cultivation and banishing them to a remote and desolate territory. At its heaviest, it meant killing them directly in an assassination or on a life and death arena to uproot the grass in its roots. In fact, after Dai Yudian had gone through 9 deaths and 1 life to finally become the emperor, he had also hesitated for a moment. He had considered in the deep of the night whether to abolish this overly cruel competition system. After all, as time passed, the situation on the continent was constantly changing, and the power of the spirit hall was growing larger, with unfathomable foundations. On the other hand, in their Star Luo imperial family, those with title Douluo level combat power were only the Hell White Tiger performed by him and the Empress. This lack of high-level combat power seemed slightly insufficient and thin when facing the spirit hall. Dai Yudian had once calculated. If this fratricidal competition system were completely abolished, allowing all princes with the White Tiger martial soul to grow safely, then within 30 years, these sons of his could definitely form a formidable top-tier combat force. There might even be several more spirit Douluos, and perhaps even the first title Douluo. Because without this cruel competition, those talented princes would not die prematurely or be forced to grow too quickly, so the chance of achieving the title Douluo rank would be higher. However, there was one point that made him feel very conflicted and wary. This was the fundamental reason why the competition system of the Luo imperial family had never been abolished to this day. That was, once the number of Hell White Tigers became too many, it would be extremely easy to cause a massive internal rebellion in the empire. Just imagine. If an imperial prince with a Hell White Tiger spirit fusion skill were sent to his territory to take up his post. What he would do in secret, like recruiting soldiers and buying horses in his territory, would be basically impossible for you, the emperor sitting in Luo City, to fully control. After all, you couldn't send people to monitor the other party's every move for 24 hours a day without any blind spots. Once the imperial prince's wings were full and he developed rebellious intentions, combined with the terrifying combat power of the Hell White Tiger, he would surely ignite the fires of a great war. Chapter 167, A New Connection Between the Zhu Sisters. Within a few generations, this internal strife for the throne would erupt completely, disintegrating the empire from within. Therefore, for the absolute concentration of imperial power and the long-term stability of the empire, the competition system must be retained even if it meant severing one's own limbs. Just as Dai Yudian was lost in thought, footsteps were heard outside the imperial study. Soon, Dai Mubai and Zhu Zuqing, having received the imperial decree, were hurriedly brought in under the lead of the royal guards. After entering the imperial study, Zhu Zuqing still maintained her cold expression. She consciously walked to her elder sister Zhu Zuyan's side, standing half a step behind her with lowered eyes, submissive and silent. In fact, on the way to the palace, Zhu Zuqing had already made some guesses. She vaguely guessed why the Luo emperor was so anxious to summon them. All of this started from the night Zhu Zuyun obtained the cultivation technique. The day after Zhu Zuyun was incredibly lucky enough to obtain the 9-yin manual cultivation technique. As a good elder sister, after careful consideration, Zhu Zuyun unhesitatingly passed this cultivation technique to her biological younger sister, Zhu Zuqing. Although this 9-yin manual was not an exclusive reward Zhu Zuqing obtained through the diary system herself. However, the system's rules did not explicitly state that a cultivation technique obtained by a group member could absolutely not be given to others to learn. What surprised the sisters the most was an extremely heaven-defying hidden function of the diary chat group. At that time, Zhu Zuyun used the chat group's upload file function to package and send the contents of the cultivation technique to Zhu Zuqing. The moment Zhu Zuqing selected and received the file on the light screen, the profound 9-yin manual cultivation technique actually began to execute directly within her body. She immediately entered the introductory state of the 9-yin manual. This was also one of the diary chat group's heaven-defying functions. It could help group members achieve a perfect introduction to a cultivation technique directly through data transmission. But it was limited only to the initial introduction. If the two sisters wanted to become stronger in this cultivation technique and reach a higher level, they still needed to spend time practicing and comprehending it themselves. This placed extremely high demands on their own talent and comprehension. This function was actually just discovered by the two sisters, Zhu Zuyun and Zhu Zuqing, by pure accident. Because previously, although the system announcements within the chat group had briefly explained that things could be uploaded and shared within the group. However, everyone was wary of each other, and no one had ever truly uploaded such a precious cultivation technique secret manual to the group. Therefore, this heaven-defying hidden function had naturally remained undiscovered until now. And precisely because of the instantaneous introduction to the 9-yin manual, Zhu Zuqing's spirit, naturally like her sisters, underwent a strange mutation. The nether attribute on her body also became thicker, purer, and deeper than before. Benefiting from the baptism of the meridians during the introduction to the cultivation technique, Zhu Zuqing's spirit power even increased by 2 levels out of thin air, leaping from level 17 to level 19. She was only one step away from becoming a spirit grandmaster. Greetings, Father Emperor. Dai Mubai gave a respectful salute, but his heart was pounding with unease. Sitting on the dragon throne, Dai Yudian's gaze was like a torch, staring intently at the two newcomers as he asked in a deep voice, Mubai, Zuqing. I ask you, is the martial soul resonance between the two of you still normal? Dai Mubai had drunk a lot of wine in the brothel yesterday and was not yet fully sober. He rubbed his still sleepy eyes and said with a face full of confusion, Father Emperor, why do you ask that? The martial soul resonance between us is naturally. Dai Mubai originally wanted to reflexively answer, normal, after all, this thing was innate, so how could it just disappear? But, in the middle of speaking, he suddenly discovered with horror. He was standing so close to Zhu Zuqing now, almost right next to her. However, his spirit actually had no reaction. That sense of martial soul resonance that would normally occur upon getting close had completely vanished. Dai Mubai was instantly pale with shock, and cold sweat immediately soaked his back. His originally somewhat drowsy mind was now like it had been splashed with a bucket of ice water, becoming completely alert. He was thoroughly terrified, his mouth agape, unable to finish the rest of his sentence. Seeing Dai Mubai's expression as if he had seen a ghost, how could Dai Yudian not understand what had happened? Bang! Burning with rage, Dai Yudian couldn't help but slam his hand hard against the imperial desk in front of him. That incredibly hard table instantly turned into a pile of dust. Bastard! Dai Yudian snorted coldly, and the terrifying pressure instantly swept through the entire imperial study, making it hard for everyone to breathe. What exactly is going on? Both sisters of your Zhu family have had their spirits undergo mutations at the same time. Dai Yudian was not a fool who could be easily fooled. If only Zhu Zuyun's spirit had a problem and lost the resonance, it could barely be called a rare coincidence. But now, even Zhu Zuqing's spirit had the same problem. Once is a coincidence, but twice. Could he still be fooled by the excuse of a coincidence? There must be some unknown, huge secret hidden within this. Dai Yudian suddenly turned his head, his tiger-like eyes staring intently at the trembling Duke Zhu to the side. Clan head Zhu. By now, shouldn't you give me an account, a reasonable explanation? The Duke Zhu truly had a grievance he couldn't voice, he felt more wrong than Doi. He really knew nothing about the changes in his daughters. Facing the furious Dai Yudian, the Duke Zhu could only look anxiously at his second daughter, Zhu Zuqing, who had remained silent. He lowered his voice and asked in a low tone, but his voice was full of severity and urgency, Zuqing. Speak up, what exactly is going on? Has your Hell Civet spirit also mutated? What exactly did you do? Zhu Zuqing looked up at her father, nodded slightly, and said with feigned innocence, Father, your daughter doesn't know what happened either. I just cultivated peacefully in my room all night as usual. But when I woke up the next morning, I found that my spirit had indeed undergone some uncontrollable changes. Hearing her sister's evasive words, Zhu Zuyun chuckled inwardly. In fact, it wasn't as simple as just losing the resonance with the princes. Zhu Zuqing had even discovered something extremely wonderful. Moreover, she was very certain that it was definitely not an illusion. She clearly felt that after her spirit mutated, between her and her sister Zhu Zuyun, there seemed to be an extremely mysterious and close connection formed invisibly. Quote closing curly bracket closing square bracket comma. Chapter 168, A Treasonous Idea. And this wonderful connection was very similar to the martial soul resonance she had experienced with Dai Mubai before. Not only Zhu Zuqing, but Zhu Zuyun also had this strong feeling. After noticing this connection at the first moment, Zhu Zuyun immediately suspected that perhaps it was because both sisters cultivated the same origin cultivation technique, the 9 Yin Manual. That was why, under acquired assimilation, a spirit fusion skill belonging to the two sisters had miraculously been produced. However, what made them feel a bit regretful was, no matter how they tried over the past few nights, they were still unable to unleash this spirit fusion skill. This caused the sisters of the Duke Zhu to feel a bit disappointed. They thought to themselves, if this close connection wasn't a precursor to a spirit fusion skill, then what else could it be? Finally, they reached the most reasonable conclusion. Perhaps it was because the 9 Yin Manual cultivation technique they were currently cultivating was only at the entry-level stage. The modification and influence of this cultivation technique on their spirit origins were still relatively superficial. Therefore, their spirit compatibility was still just a tiny bit short, making it temporarily impossible to unleash. As long as time passed and they cultivated the technique to a high realm, this hypothesis would surely come true. Dai Yudian looked at the Duke Zhu, who was stammering and unable to say anything meaningful for a long time. He laughed out of extreme anger and sneered repeatedly, good, good, good. Truly very good. Your Majesty will be magnanimous for once today, I will give your Zhu family 1 month's time. Dai Yudian stood up, looking down at the Duke Zhu from a height, and issued his final ultimatum. Within this month, you had better find out the reason and give me a reasonable explanation and solution. Otherwise, you are well aware of the consequences. The Duke Zhu was so frightened by these words full of killing intent that his legs went weak. He quickly lowered his head and nodded repeatedly in agreement. Yes, 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 your servant obeys the decree. Your servant thanks your Majesty for your magnanimity. Rest assured, your Majesty, within this month, your servant will do his best to find out exactly what changes have occurred in those 2 rebellious daughters. Next, Dai Yudian waved his hand impatiently, signaling the Duke Zhu to withdraw with Zhu Zuyun and Zhu Zuqing. In the vast imperial study, only the eldest Prince Dai Wuxi and the 3rd Prince Dai Mubai remained, each with their own thoughts. After the Zhu family members had walked far away, Dai Yudian sat back on his dragon throne, his sharp gaze fixed on Dai Mubai, whose mouth still bore a trace of undisguised secret joy. He gave a cold laugh, shattering Dai Mubai's fantasy. Mubai, what are you happy about? You don't naively think that because you and Zhu Zuqing can no longer perform a spirit fusion skill, you can take this opportunity to escape and withdraw from the imperial family's life and death competition, do you? Hearing this, the smile on Dai Mubai's lips instantly froze, and his expression changed drastically. Dai Yudian's gaze was ice cold as he said, I'm telling you plainly, even if a month from now the Zhu family is truly powerless and cannot give me a reasonable explanation and solution, the competition for the succession between you and Wuxi will still proceed as usual. Only the one with stronger individual strength is qualified to live and has the chance to inherit the Douluo throne. Dai Yudian analyzed the situation coldly. Moreover, the 2 of you have only lost martial soul resonance with the sisters Zhu Zuqing and Zhu Zuyun for now. This doesn't mean everything is over. The Zhu family has many branches and great influence, although they currently only have these 2 in the direct line. Don't forget, the Zhu family also has collateral branches. Furthermore, both you and those girls from the Zhu family are still very young. In the coming years, there will surely be members of the Zhu family who continue to experience the awakening of the nether spirit cat martial soul. At that time, with more screening, there will surely be new Zhu family women who can produce martial soul resonance with you and once again unleash the Hell White Tiger. Do you both understand me clearly? If this were the era of the unrivaled Tang sect 10,000 years later, Dai Yudian's idea would obviously have no chance of success. Because in the years 10,000 years later, whether it was the Dai family or the Zhu family, their bloodlines had been passed down for countless generations and had long become extremely thin. Finding clansmen capable of producing martial soul resonance was already extremely rare and almost impossible to see. But in the current Douluo era, the bloodline between the Dai family's White Tiger and the Zhu family's Nether was still very pure. The probability of the 2 family spirits producing resonance was still very widespread and common. Unless the women of the Zhu family stopped giving birth entirely and their lineage ended. Otherwise, Dai Yudian absolutely did not believe that the vast Zhu family would be unable to find new replacements who could resonate with his princes. It could be seen here that Dai Mubai's ability to say, women are resources was inextricably linked to Dai Yudian. Dai Mubai listened to his father's cold and heartless words. His mood, which had been secretly happy because of the loss of resonance and the thought that he could escape his fatal destiny, instantly vanished into thin air. He felt that he was completely finished, falling into a bottomless abyss. He knew very well in his heart that even if the Zhu family could find a second collateral woman to produce martial soul resonance with him in the future, the innate aptitude of such a collateral woman could absolutely never compare to Zhu Zuqing, who had innate full spirit power. With their ages as they were, his overall strength would still be unable to catch up to Dai Wuxi, who was 6 years older than him. In this cruel competition, he would probably still be unable to escape death in the future. However, in stark contrast to Dai Mubai's despairing mood, as if his parents had died, Dai Wuxi, who was beside him, was ecstatic after hearing his father's words. Right, why didn't I think of that? Dai Wuxi roared frantically in his heart. According to what Dai Yudian just said, the rules of the competition had not changed, it still depended on whose strength was greater. Then, having cultivated for a full 6 years longer than Dai Mubai, his spirit power was significantly ahead. Without the influence of the spirit fusion skill, the greatest variable, wouldn't it be easy for him to defeat Dai Mubai in a duel, a one-sided crushing victory? He still had a very high probability of steadily competing for that throne. Only. In this extreme ecstasy, an extremely subtle cold light flashed through Dai Wuxi's gloomy eyes. He keenly realized that this situation of certain victory was actually built upon one prerequisite. That was, his father Dai Yudian must absolutely not have any more new offspring born. If his father really did as he thought and planned to start a new account, then his status as the eldest prince, Dai Wuxi, would once again be threatened. Even if he were much stronger than this newborn, even if there were only a 1 in 10,000 chance, he would have to stifle it. Chapter 169, Do you think the imperial family would be that kind? Once this rebellious thought surfaced in his mind, it took root completely in his heart. The Zhu family Duke's mansion. Duke Zhu Ming, who had just left the imperial study, took Zhu Zuyun and Zhu Zuqing straight to the most hidden secret chamber in the mansion. As soon as the door of the secret chamber closed, Zhu Ming's submissive expression from the palace instantly turned ashen. He turned around and looked at his two daughters with a very unpleasant expression. The two of you, tell me the truth. Zhu Ming's voice was kept very low, yet it carried an unquestionable authority. What exactly happened to you? Are you truly completely ignorant about the mutation of your spirits? Facing their father's oppressive scrutiny, Zhu Zuyun and Zhu Zujing appeared unusually calm. Even though they already had the answers in their hearts, they showed no emotion on their faces. They glanced at each other and then shook their heads in unison, saying firmly, Father, we really don't know. Hearing this answer, Zhu Ming's brow furrowed, his eyes full of suspicion. He took a deep breath and said solemnly, since you say you don't know, fine. Both of you, release your spirits right now and let me examine them carefully myself. Zhu Zuyun and Zhu Zujing exchanged another look and nodded slightly. Without any hesitation, the spirit power within their bodies instantly began to circulate. Hell Civet, possess. Accompanied by two crisp shouts, two bursts of dark black light instantly bloomed within the secret chamber. However, the very moment their spirits were released. As the head of the family and a grand spirit Douluo of over rank 80, Zhu Ming's expression suddenly changed. Because at this moment, he could clearly feel a trace of suppression coming from the spirit origin. Though this pressure was weak, it truly existed. How is this possible? Zhu Ming felt a wave of shock in his heart. He was clearly a spirit Douluo, while of the two daughters before him, one was only in her 30s and the other wasn't even level 20. In the face of such a massive gap in spirit power rank, how could he be suppressed by the spirits of two juniors? This defied all common sense. It shouldn't be possible at all. With this intense shock, Zhu Ming quickly steadied his mind, widened his eyes, and carefully observed the changes in his daughter's spirits. Upon closer inspection, he found that the phantom of the Hell Civet behind Zhu Zuyun was significantly larger than it had been before the mutation. The black fur on the cat's phantom stood on end, emitting a bone-chilling aura of gloom, and its claws were so sharp they seemed capable of tearing through space. Turning to his second daughter, Zhu Zujing. Although the phantom of the Hell Civet behind her still appeared very small and its size hadn't changed much. However, the hell attribute on that little black cat had become even more concentrated than Zhu Zuyun's. What on earth is going on? Zhu Ming frowned deeply, falling into profound thought. In fact, on the way back, he had initially strongly suspected whether these two audacious little girls were playing some kind of trick in private, using it as a way to deliberately escape the cruel imperial competition. But seeing these distinctly different spirit manifestations now, he immediately dismissed the thought. Because, if they were playing tricks in private through some secret method, logically, the direction and form of the mutations in their spirits should have been identical. But looking at it now, the mutation directions of the two were clearly somewhat different. After confirming this, Zhu Ming retracted his aura, sighed heavily with a somber face, and said, it seems this is by no means the work of man. In the coming days, I can only search through more of the ancient texts passed down by the family, to see if there are any records of such a rare mutation. Hearing that her father was no longer questioning them, Zhu Zuyun took the opportunity to withdraw her spirit. She looked at her father and asked tentatively, Father, since the die is cast, we have now completely lost our spirit fusion skill with them, losing the greatest bond. Then in the future, will we no longer have to participate in that cruel imperial competition like before? Hearing his eldest daughter's somewhat naive question, Zhu Ming could only give a helpless, bitter smile. He looked at Zhu Zuyun and shook his head heavily, sighing, Zuyun, you are usually such a smart child. You are so many years older than Zhu Jing and have witnessed the cold-bloodedness of the imperial family, how can you still ask such a naive question? Zhu Ming's gaze became incredibly sharp. Do you think the Douluo imperial family would be so kind as to let you off easily? Even though the two of you are now useless, and can no longer perform the Hell White Tiger with Daiwisi and Daimubai. But don't forget, your engagement to the princess was announced to the world long ago. As long as this engagement isn't dissolved, then regardless of whether you are willing or not, in the future, you must marry into the imperial family. In life, you are the imperial family's people. In death, you are the imperial family's ghosts. At this point, a hint of sorrow entered Zhu Ming's tone. It's just that, because you've lost the spirit fusion skill, your greatest bargaining chip, your status after marrying over will suffer an earth-shattering plunge. Take you for example, Zuyun. Previously, as Daiwisi's best match, once he ascended, you had a high probability of becoming the Empress of Douluo. But now, you've lost your utility. When you marry over in the future, you might only be a common concubine, left at the mercy of others. After listening to her father's analysis, Zhu Zuyun's brows knitted tightly together. She bit her red lips and uttered two words unwillingly, what a pity. Then, she remembered the imperial decree the emperor had issued in the imperial study today and asked worriedly, what if, after a month, our Zhu family still can't find the reason and can't give his majesty an explanation? What would the serious consequences be? Zhu Ming waved his hand, signaling them to be at ease. You two don't need to worry about that at all. Although my Zhu family has been ministers for generations, and serving a monarch is like accompanying a tiger. However, if the imperial family wants to stabilize the realm, it is absolutely impossible without my Zhu family's Hell Civet bloodline. In a month, even if we can't provide a satisfactory answer, the imperial family will at most fly into a rage. While there will certainly be some punishment, it will definitely not truly harm the lives or the foundation of our Zhu family. After settling this most troublesome issue, Zhu Ming's gaze swept back and forth between his two daughters, finally fixing on his eldest daughter, Zhu Zuyun. He looked at Zhu Zuyun with concern and said earnestly, actually, compared to the young Zhu Jing, I am now more worried about your situation. P.S. I woke up late from my nap today, didn't realize it was already past 7, so the update is late, sorry tilde. Chapter 170, Go to the Heaven Do Empire, a turning point. Zhu Ming lowered his voice. Now, you have completely lost your core value for performing the spirit fusion skill with Daiwisi. From now on, your life will likely become very difficult. Duke Chu's words were very subtle, but Zhu Zuyun, who had grown up amidst power struggles since childhood, clearly understood her father's implication immediately. To put the conduct of the men in the Douluo imperial family politely, they were romantic and left a trail of broken hearts everywhere. To put it bluntly, they were lecherous by nature, living lives of luxury and debauchery. Just look at Daimubai, who, at only a few years old, was already famous throughout the red light districts. One could easily see that as his elder brother, Daiwisi's private nature was definitely not much different. The only reason Daiwisi had previously shown some restraint in front of Zhu Zuyun was entirely because the two of them needed a high degree of emotional and physical compatibility to perfectly execute the Hell White Tiger. This fusion had to be built on the foundation of mutual consent and a high level of intimacy. High intimacy was extremely beneficial for increasing the compatibility and power of the spirit fusion skill. This condition wasn't something Daiwisi could achieve by relying on his status as a prince to force himself upon Zhu Zuyun. It required time to carefully cultivate the affection and trust between both parties. It was precisely because of this protection that until now, the hot-bodied Zhu Zuyun had actually managed to remain a virgin, her body untouched. But now, the situation was completely different. Since Zhu Zuyun had completely lost the protective umbrella and supreme value of the spirit fusion skill. From now on, the true nature of Diaries would surely be exposed as he tore off his mask. He would definitely try every possible means to obtain Zhu Zuyun's alluring body. However, because Zhu Zuyun was still the eldest legitimate daughter of the dignified Yuming Duke's manor, her status still carried weight. No matter how lustful Diaries was, he couldn't be as overbearing and use brute force as he would with commoner women. He would certainly use various indirect methods to force Zhu Zuyun to submit. At the thought of the hidden arrows his eldest daughter would have to face in the future. Looking at his two silent daughters, Zhu Ming's expression struggled for a moment. In the eyes of this duke, who had always been known for being cold-blooded and ruthless, a rare flash of warmth actually flickered. He took a deep breath, as if making a major decision that went against his ancestors, and whispered, "If it really comes to it, Zuyun, Zuqing, listen carefully. Once the 1-month deadline passes, find a suitable time to secretly leave the Star Luo Empire." Zhu Ming looked at his two daughters and said, "Head north, go to the Heaven Do Empire." Although the Heaven Do Empire is slightly weaker in strength, the Star Luo Empire's reach cannot extend into the heart of Heaven Do. As long as you get there, you will be much safer than staying in Star Luo. Upon hearing these words, Zhu Zuyun's expression changed instantly. She raised her head in shock, looking at the father before her, both familiar and strange, with a face full of disbelief. "Father, what are you saying?" Zhu Zuyun's voice was trembling. "If the two of us just leave without saying goodbye and run away, what will happen to you? What will happen to our entire Zhu family? If the imperial family is enraged, won't your life be in danger?" In fact, after Zhu Zuyun obtained the 9-yen manual, she did indeed have the crazy idea of escaping in secret. However, in her plan, she only thought about finding a way to send Zhu Zuqing out of the Star Luo Empire. As for herself, she intended to stay behind and continue to deal with Diaries to provide cover for her younger sister. Because she knew very well that if both sisters disappeared at the same time, it would be an absolute catastrophe for the entire Yuming Duke's manor, and the family would surely face a brutal purge by the imperial family. She never imagined that this father, who had always acted so cold-blooded, as if he didn't care about their lives at all, would actually take the initiative to say such words to let them escape for their lives at this critical moment of life and death. Seeing Zhu Zuyun's terrified and surprised reaction, Zhu Ming only gave a very indifferent, bitter smile. He stood with his hands behind his back. "What? Do you find it surprising? Do you think this cold-blooded father of yours has taken the wrong medicine today?" Zhu Ming looked at his two daughters, his eyes full of helplessness. "But don't blame me for being cold and ruthless in the past. Born into a family like ours, so-called familial affection is itself an extremely luxurious thing." He paused. "As for whether the imperial family will be thunderously enraged and wipe out our family if you two disappear, you don't have to worry about that at all. Your father is, after all, a spirit Douluo of over the 80th rank. In the entire Star Luo Empire, that is a top-tier combat power. For the sake of still possessing the invincible spirit fusion skill, the Hell White Tiger, in the future, they would never dare to truly break ties with our Zhu family, let alone slaughter us. After all, their Dai family will still need to continuously select new Zhu family women from our branch families in the future to use that spirit fusion skill with their newborn princes." At this point, Zhu Ming let out a long sigh and waved his hand, signaling the two daughters not to say any more. "All right, enough said. You two may leave now. During this time, don't run around, just cultivate well in the manor. Strive for the day when you can make a name for yourselves outside and truly rely on your own strength to change the fate of our family." Watching the backs of his two daughters as they silently departed, the secret chamber returned to silence. Zhu Ming stood alone in the darkness, speechless for a long time. Perhaps, in the eyes of those uninformed commoners and nobles outside, the fact that the Zhu family and the Dai family could intermarry for generations and work together to unleash the peerless power of the Hell White Tiger was an extremely grand and supreme honor. However, only the true core members of the Zhu family knew best in their hearts. In the eyes of the Dai imperial family, what were the women of the Zhu family? They were merely appendages. Or to put it more bluntly, they were cold political tools that the Dai family needed to stabilize their supreme imperial power. And those Zhu family women were all sacrifices in this process of power transition. After countless years of this legacy, who knows how many white bones of Zhu family women have been buried? How many Zhu family daughters died miserably in that bloodless imperial competition? However, by the generation where Zhu Ming served as the family head, everything seemed to have a turning point. Chapter 171 Spirit Fusion. Why are the Crown Prince Your Highness's pectoral muscles a bit soft? He was truly sincere in wanting to completely change this despairing family destiny, and his only confidence lay in these two extremely outstanding daughters. Both Zhu Zuyun and Zhu Zuqing's cultivate talent were very stunning. Especially Zhu Zuqing, who actually had innate full spirit power. Possessing such heaven-defying aptitude, as long as she didn't die prematurely, she would become a titled Douluo in the future. And as long as either one of the two sisters could successfully become a titled Douluo, their Zhu family would truly break free from the imperial family in this continent and within this Star Luo Empire. On the other side, Heaven Do Empire, Heaven Do City. After receiving multiple invitations from Shui Qing, Lin Yuan finally found the time to head to the Crown Prince's mansion. Relying on the Crown Prince medallion that Shui Qing had previously given him, which symbolized his identity within the Eastern Palace, Lin Yuan passed through the heavily guarded Imperial Palace without hindrance and soon arrived at the Crown Prince's exclusive palace. Seeing that Lin Yuan had finally arrived, Shui Qing also quickly stood up to welcome him. However, in the eyes of this Crown Prince Your Highness, there was a faint hint of resentment. "Lin Yuan, you've finally come. This prince has been waiting for you for many days." Shui Qing looked at Lin Yuan and sighed softly. "I'm hosting a banquet at noon today, you should stay here and eat with me." After the two of them took their seats, they chatted casually for a moment and tasted some fragrant tea. Only then did Shui Qing begin to get to the main point. "Lin Yuan, actually, when I saw you last time." Shui Qing's eyes moved slightly as he said tentatively, "I seem to feel a sliver of strange martial soul resonance from the spirit on your body. I wonder if you had the same feeling as I did at that time." Lin Yuan put down his teacup, nodded without hesitation, and admitted generously, "I did indeed have that feeling." Hearing this, Shui Qing's brows twitched slightly, and his tone carried a hint of blame. "Then since you felt it, how could you endure for over a month without coming to the Imperial Palace to verify it with me?" Lin Yuan gave a hollow laugh, rubbed his nose, and put on a helpless look, saying, "Your Highness, please forgive me. Haven't I been really busy lately? I've been busy with cultivate every day. Look, as soon as I had time, I immediately came to find you, Crown Prince Your Highness. Lin Yuan's eyes then darted around, and a mischievous smile curled at the corner of his mouth as he proposed, in that case, let the two of us try it now. Saying that, before Shui Qing could react, Lin Yuan stood up directly and opened his arms. He stepped forward and unceremoniously took Shui Qing into a tight embrace. This sudden intimate move made Qian Runshui's mind go momentarily blank. She was the young lord of the Spirit Hall, the dignified descendant of the Angel clan. When had she ever been hugged by a man like this? Subsequently, Qian Runshui instinctively struggled violently, wanting to push Lin Yuan away with force. However, because Lin Yuan's hug was so tight, his arms were like iron hoops. In that first moment, she actually failed to push him away. What are you doing? Qian Runshui shouted with some anger. However, because of extreme shame, anger, and panic, her voice actually cracked. What came out was not Shui Qinghei's gentle male voice, but a crisp female voice with a hint of coquettishness. Lin Yuan chuckled inwardly, but on the surface, he played dumb and said, "Ah, I heard that if you want to perform a spirit fusion skill, don't you need to have extremely intimate physical contact? Then the two of us should embrace and then try to fusion the spirit power in our bodies together." Lin Yuan deliberately lowered his head, leaned closer to Shui Qinghei's ear, and asked in confusion, "But, Crown Prince Your Highness, why did your voice suddenly become a bit like a woman's voice?" Hearing this, Shui Qinghei's face instantly turned flushed red. This time, she finally burst out with a surge of strength and pushed Lin Yuan away forcefully. She took 2 steps back, glared at Lin Yuan, and said somewhat exasperatedly, "That was because I was startled by your sudden move, so my voice changed. You don't think I really have Dragon Yang's preference, do you? What's the point of 2 grown men hugging like this?" Qian Runshui forced herself to remain calm and corrected him through gritted teeth. "To test if we can do a spirit fusion, there's no need for this at all. Just holding hands is enough." At this moment, Qian Runshui's heart was beating violently in her chest, so fast it felt like it would jump out. This was the first time in her life she had embraced a member of the opposite sex so closely. That sense of pressure filled with masculine aura made her feel uncomfortable all over. Seeing her ashamed and angry look, Lin Yuan teased somewhat inappropriately, "So that's how it is. It was my oversight. However, Crown Prince Your Highness's chest muscles are really well trained." Lin Yuan rubbed his chin, recalling the sensation from just now, and chuckled, "They're just a bit soft." Wearing these loose Crown Prince robes, it wasn't really obvious. Qian Runshui was disguised as Shui Qing, and although she had the skull bone of the angel god Raymond to help disguise her appearance and aura, her own physical characteristics could not completely change from female to male. That proud size, once held tightly, would naturally reveal a hint of abnormality. Lin Yuan being so mischievous was actually to deliberately tease Qian Runshui and see how she would react. However, Qian Runshui's ability to endure was even more terrifying than he had imagined. Looking at Qian Runshui's eyes, which were about to spit fire, she was clearly testing the limits of her rage. But for the sake of the grand infiltration plan, she forced herself to endure and did not strike at Lin Yuan. She just took a few deep breaths to calm her wildly beating heart. Then, she silently reached out her fair palm. "Stop talking nonsense." Qian Runshui glared at him with some shame and anger. "Quickly reach out your hand and give it a try." Lin Yuan knew when to stop and no longer continued to tease. He reached out his large hand and grasped Qian Runshui's soft hand. The touch was extremely delicate and warm, not at all like a man's hand. Then, the two of them began to hold their breath and concentrate, mobilizing the spirit power in their bodies and attempting to make contact. During the attempt, a miracle happened. They indeed found that their spirit power merged together without any hindrance. That sense of seamless blending made both of their spirits feel invigorated. And just as Lin Yuan wanted to go a step further, following the convergence of spirit power to try and trigger the fusion of their spirits, an accident occurred. It seemed that Qian Runshui's subconscious had generated great resistance and rejection, directly cutting off the connection between the spirits. This caused the spirit fusion process to come to an abrupt halt, and the fusion could not be successfully completed. The two let go of each other's hands. Lin Yuan frowned and said somewhat strangely, "How strange. Our spirits definitely have a very high degree of compatibility, and the spirit power fusion was also very smooth. But why did this crucial spirit fusion fail to succeed?" Chapter 172, Heading to Moon Pavilion. Looking at Lin Yuan's confused expression, he had actually guessed the real reason long ago. That was because the spirit Qian Runshui currently displayed to the world was the Swan Martial Soul, a disguise for the Heavendo Imperial family's legacy. If the two of them truly held nothing back and successfully completed the spirit fusion, under that intense resonance, her Seraphim Martial Soul would inevitably be exposed. And this would instantly reveal that she was not the crown prince of the Heavendo Imperial family at all. Her true identity would be completely exposed. Qian Runshui naturally wouldn't take that risk. Facing Lin Yuan's question, Qian Runshui's eyes flickered slightly as she forced a lie, saying, "This is normal. How could a spirit fusion skill be so easy to perform? Although we have compatibility and our spirit power doesn't clash, the communication between our spirit origins requires constant practice and coordination between the two of us. Only when we achieve an absolute connection of hearts and minds can it be released. Let's stop here for today." Inside the side hall of the Crown Prince's mansion, maidservants entered in a line, bringing out plates of exquisite imperial dishes. After that heart-pounding yet inconclusive attempt at spirit fusion, the atmosphere between the two of them relaxed slightly. Then, while enjoying this sumptuous luncheon, Lin Yuan put down his jade chopsticks, rubbed his brow with feigned distress, and specifically mentioned a troubling matter to Qian Runshui. "Brother Qing, lately when I cultivate, I always feel restless and irritable." Lin Yuan sighed and said seriously, "Perhaps it's because my god-slaying spear spirit has an ultimate killing attribute. As my spirit power increases, my own killing intent is becoming heavier and heavier, sometimes even affecting my state of mind." At this point, Lin Yuan looked up, his gaze sincere as he looked at Qian Runshui, who was disguised as Shui Qing. Is there anywhere quiet and elegant near Heavendo City that can help someone regulate this violent killing intent? Lin Yuan's decision to bring this up during the luncheon was naturally not without purpose. He had his own calculations. He mainly wanted to use this reason to guide Qian Runshui into recommending he visit Moon Pavilion. Lin Yuan had 2 extremely important goals for going to Moon Pavilion. The first goal was naturally to meet Tang Yuehua in person and see if she also possessed a diary copy. And the second goal was the most critical. Zhao Yun had heavily injured Tang Hao and severed one of his arms. Lin Yuan wanted to know if the severely wounded Tang Hao would go to Moon Pavilion to seek Tang Yuehua's protection. Lin Yuan wanted to take this opportunity to scout out the situation at Moon Pavilion. Qian Runshui did not suspect anything after hearing Lin Yuan's troubles. After all, a spirit with the ultimate killing attribute was indeed very prone to backlash, leading to chi deviation. Qian Runshui put down her chopsticks and thought for a moment, and an excellent place immediately came to mind. If you want to regulate killing intent and cultivate your character, you've asked the right person. Qian Runshui smiled and said, in Heaven Do City, the most suitable place is none other than Moon Pavilion. After this luncheon, I happen to be free and can personally take you there. Qian Runshui then began to introduce the situation of Moon Pavilion to Lin Yuan. The pavilion master of Moon Pavilion is named Tang Yuehua, and she is the premier master of court etiquette in Heaven Do City. Although her own spirit power is limited by a spirit mutation and has remained at level 9 her entire life, making her hardly a powerhouse. She possesses an extremely rare innate domain, the Noble Ring. Qian Runshui said, this domain has no offensive power, but it is perfect for helping one purify the soul and suppress and regulate the violent killing intent within the body. Going to her to study music and etiquette for a while will definitely be of great benefit to your cultivation. These words were exactly what Lin Yuan wanted to hear. He immediately feigned being overjoyed and thanked the Crown Prince repeatedly. After the luncheon, the two of them took the Crown Prince's exclusive carriage and traveled smoothly to the most prosperous central district of Heaven Do City. The carriage slowly came to a halt in front of a massive, ancient-style building filled with an aura of elegance. This was Moon Pavilion. With Qian Runshui personally leading the way, the people of Moon Pavilion naturally did not dare to stop them and respectfully welcomed the two inside. In a quiet inner hall, Lin Yuan finally met the legendary pavilion master of Moon Pavilion. The moment he saw Tang Yuehua, a hint of amazement couldn't help but flash through Lin Yuan's eyes. He had to admit that the Tang Yuehua before him had an exceptionally outstanding temperament. She wore a silver court dress that perfectly outlined her full and rounded figure. Her pinned-up hair and gentle eyes all radiated a mature and alluring, housewife, charm. Although Lin Yuan knew that this noble pavilion master had never been married, this temperament was entirely natural. Looking at this beautiful woman, Lin Yuan's mind stirred. Without hesitation, he directly used the only binding slot the system had for this month and attempted to bind it to Tang Yuehua. Ding, target character Tang Yuehua detected, meets binding conditions. Ding, binding successful. Hearing the system prompt in his mind, Lin Yuan was also quite surprised. This result was beyond his expectations. In Lin Yuan's subconscious, the objects of system binding were usually women with extremely high talent or great future achievements. A woman like Tang Yuehua, whose spirit power was extremely low and who was essentially a trophy character. No matter how beautiful she was or how excellent her temperament, the system shouldn't have been able to bind her. However, the result was firmly outside his expectations, it actually succeeded. Immediately following the successful binding prompt, the system's rewards were also distributed. Ding, congratulations to the host for obtaining the binding target's talent ability, Noble Ring Domain. In the next second, Lin Yuan felt an extremely cool and gentle energy appear out of thin air in his mind and limbs. This Noble Ring Domain obtained from Tang Yuehua perfectly integrated into Lin Yuan's body. Lin Yuan could clearly feel the violent killing intent that had accumulated in his body for years because of the god-slaying spear. Under the gentle soothing of this domain, it actually played a role in regulating and suppressing it to a certain extent. It made his entire spirit become incredibly clear. Lin Yuan was overjoyed. He had originally just found an excuse to come and investigate, but he didn't expect to have such an unexpected extra harvest. Now, when he used the god-slaying spear to fight in the future, he would no longer have to worry about killing intent backfiring on his mind. And just as Lin Yuan was secretly happy, the atmosphere in the room underwent an extremely subtle change the moment Qian Runshui and Tang Yuehua formally met. Chapter 173, Tang Yuehua's breakthrough to rank 10 is exposed. The moment Qian Runshui led Lin Yuan forward and their gazes met with Tang Yuehua. Both of their bodies stiffened simultaneously, and they froze in place. Because there was a special rule among diary copy owners. When two people who possess a diary copy get close enough in reality, they could sense through the instance whether the other person also possessed a diary copy. Tang Yuehua's heart immediately churned with turbulent waves, and her jade hands beneath her wide sleeves clenched tightly. Although she had been reading the diary slowly these past few days, she had just finished the part about the Heaven Do imperial family coup. Therefore, she knew better than anyone else. This gentle and refined Heaven Do crown prince, Shui Qing, in front of her was actually Qian Runshui, the young lord of Spirit Hall, in disguise. Tang Yuehua took a deep breath, suppressing the shock in her heart. On the other side, Qian Runshui's heart was equally restless. She had brought Lin Yuan over not knowing that Tang Yuehua possessed a diary copy, but now, it could only be said that she had an unexpected gain. She also has a diary copy. Qian Runshui was secretly shocked. Qian Runshui was incredibly intelligent, her mind raced, and she immediately connected it to the conversations that had occurred in the chat group yesterday. She stood still, showing no change in expression, but secretly and quickly opened the chat group for the diary copy. I really don't swing that way, an elegant lady. I really don't swing that way, what a coincidence, you must be the pavilion master of this moon pavilion, Tang Yuehua, right? Qian Runshui's message instantly caused an uproar in the group. The reason Qian Runshui dared to so confidently call out the other party's name was naturally due to her logical deduction. Among the new group members who joined before yesterday, excluding the vicious beasts who had already revealed their spirit beast identities, the remaining human spirit masters, combined with Tang Yuehua's own elegant and distinguished demeanor, and her self-description of being slightly older and having low cultivation, Qian Runshui could easily determine that the group nickname, Elegant Lady, absolutely belonged to Tang Yuehua herself, who was standing before her at this moment. However, facing Qian Runshui's extremely direct naming in the chat group, Tang Yuehua, standing opposite, merely maintained her gentle and dignified smile. She did not respond in the chat group, nor did she show the slightest trace of panic. She chose to play dead. After all, after knowing the other party's terrifying identity as the young lord of Spirit Hall, how could she dare to casually interject in the group? Watching Tang Yuehua remain unresponsive in the group, a flicker of surprise crossed Qian Runshui's eyes. Given this, Qian Runshui couldn't directly expose her in reality and could only temporarily give up. She composed herself and once again put on Shui Qinghei's gentle and refined crown prince mask. Then, she very naturally introduced Lin Yuan, who was beside her, to Tang Yuehua. Pavilion Master Tang, I apologize for the disturbance. Qian Runshui pointed at Lin Yuan and said with a smile, this is junior brother Lin Yuan from Heaven Do Royal Academy. His spirit is called the God-slaying spear. Because this spirit is extremely overbearing, it causes him to accumulate too much killing intent, which over time could harm his foundation. Qian Runshui explained her purpose. Therefore, this prince specially recommended him to Moon Pavilion, to Pavilion Master Tang, for conditioning. I hope to use Pavilion Master Tang's miraculous noble ring domain to help him cleanse his mind and purify this killing intent. Hearing the crown prince's introduction, Tang Yuehua's gaze naturally fell upon Lin Yuan. This was the young man who wrote the diary and knew the future. Although Tang Yuehua was extremely curious, she maintained a flawless, dignified smile on her face. She smiled gently, bowed slightly, and said, since he is a young talent personally recommended by His Highness the Crown Prince, then Yuehua naturally has no reason to refuse. Your Highness, please rest assured, Yuehua will do her best. With that, Tang Yuehua turned around and, with graceful demeanor, invited the two into an elegant room. Inside the elegant room, sandalwood incense wafted, and the decor was extremely refined, making one feel serene upon entering. Tang Yuehua walked to the center of the room, turned around, looked at Lin Yuan with her beautiful eyes, and softly said, Lin Yuan, to prescribe the right medicine, I must first personally feel the intensity of your killing intent. Young Master Lin, please release your spirit now. Lin Yuan nodded without hesitation. With a thought, the spirit power within his body surged out instantly. Accompanied by an extremely piercing whoosh, the god-slaying spear appeared in Lin Yuan's hand. The moment the god-slaying spear appeared, a terrifying killing intent instantly permeated the entire elegant room. Facing this terrifying and extreme killing aura directly, Tang Yuehua's expression slightly changed, and she couldn't help but furrow her delicate brows deeply. She dared not be negligent in the slightest and immediately activated the spirit power within her body. Noble ring. As Tang Yuehua lightly shouted, rings of silver light, filled with noble and peaceful aura, slowly rose from beneath her feet. This was her mutated innate domain spirit. Because she had just broken through to rank 10 through the system's reward, she hadn't even had time to acquire her first spirit ring. Therefore, when she released her spirit at this moment, her feet were empty, without even a single spirit ring. This actually worked out perfectly by chance. At this moment, she wouldn't expose the secret of her spirit power having broken through rank 9 in front of Jian Runshui and Lin Yuan. However, Tang Yuehua had underestimated the mental force levels of both Lin Yuan and Jian Runshui. The moment Tang Yuehua released her spirit, the uncontrollable overflow of spirit power fluctuations still betrayed her. Lin Yuan and Jian Runshui almost simultaneously noticed the anomaly. Although the spirit power fluctuation was still very faint, its profoundness and quality were definitely no longer the rumored rank 9 that she had been stuck at for a lifetime. Instead, it was a real, successfully broken through innate restriction of rank 10 spirit power. Lin Yuan remained calm on the surface, allowing the gentle domain to cleanse the killing intent around him, but secretly, he immediately communicated with the system in his mind. System, what exactly is going on? Lin Yuan silently inquired in his heart. Did you secretly give Tang Yuehua some special reward, causing her recognize, waste spirit, to break through from rank 9 to rank 10 in one go? Facing Lin Yuan's inquiry, the system's mechanical voice immediately sounded in Lin Yuan's mind, providing a reply. Ding, replying to host, when Tang Yuehua successfully acquired and bound the diary copy. As a basic welfare for newcomers, she automatically received a basic reward of 1 level of spirit power increase issued by the system. P.S. Please vote, please continue reading tilde. Chapter 174, Lin Yuan's Malicious Fun. Hearing the system's confirmation, Lin Yuan suddenly understood. No wonder this woman looked radiant, it turned out her long-standing heart ailment had finally been removed. Meanwhile, Jian Runshui on the other side reacted even faster. She maintained Shui Qinghei's gentle and refined demeanor, sitting gracefully in her chair, observing the two. Her consciousness, however, had already swiftly sunk into the chat group. I really don't swing that way. At Elegant Lady, Pavilion Master Tang, did you receive a guaranteed spirit power boost reward from the diary copy system? I really don't swing that way. Don't think about hiding it from me, otherwise, why is your current spirit power fluctuation no longer rank 9, but rank 10? These two sudden messages in the group chat were like two heavy hammers, striking hard at Tang Yuehua's heart. Tang Yuehua, who was closing her eyes to maintain her domain, trembled violently, her heart instantly filled with shock and dismay. She had never expected Jian Runshui's perception to be so terrifyingly keen and sensitive. She didn't even have her first spirit ring, yet merely leaking a spirit power fluctuation allowed her true cultivation to be seen through. Tang Yuehua felt a chill down her spine at this moment, and even the spirit power maintaining her noble ring became slightly disordered. Immediately after, before Tang Yuehua could even think of how to reply in the group, Jian Runshui's message, carrying a hint of sternness and warning, once again flooded the screen. I really don't swing that way. Your spirit power has been stuck for so many years, yet now it has suddenly broken through its shackles for no reason. I really don't swing that way. This extremely abnormal phenomenon, if Lin Yuan investigates it even slightly, he will definitely not be fooled. I really don't swing that way. This could directly trigger his high vigilance, making him suspect that you possess a diary copy. Jian Runshui's words were filled with a strong sense of crisis. She would never allow Tang Yuehua's oversight to jeopardize their common interests. I really don't swing that way. You should know how shrewd Lin Yuan is. Once you are exposed, he might trace the clues. I really don't swing that way. This could lead to all of us in the group who possess diary copies also being exposed. I really don't swing that way. If that really happens, he will definitely be on guard when writing his diary. I really don't swing that way. In that case, it won't be so easy for us to safely obtain rewards from the diary copy in the future. Looking at Jian Runshui's analysis in the chat group, Tang Yuehua was also burning with anxiety. She knew Jian Runshui was absolutely right. Her sudden rank 10 spirit power would definitely be a fatal flaw if she couldn't find a perfect excuse. But what excuse could perfectly cover up the traces of the system's reward? Just as Tang Yuehua was at a loss, Jian Runshui suggested. I really don't swing that way. Therefore, for the safety of all of us, you must immediately find a way. I really don't swing that way, to make this sudden rank increase of yours logical and completely justified. I really don't swing that way, and currently, there's only one most perfect choice that can dispel Lin Yuan's suspicions. I really don't swing that way, that is, to see if you can, by your own ability and means, obtain a precious heaven and earth treasure from Lin Yuan. I really don't swing that way, whether it's a legendary immortal herb, or a slightly less effective half-immortal herb, either would be good. I really don't swing that way, as long as you can get a medicinal herb from him and consume it, then your subsequent breakthrough to rank 9 will be completely justifiable. 7 Treasures Little Rich Girl, wow, so the noblewoman who just joined the group is really Pavilion Master Tang Yuehua. 7 Treasures Little Rich Girl, Crown Prince is right, your sudden change from rank 9 to rank 10 is definitely a huge flaw. I want to live past 30, indeed, brother Lin Yuan's mind is very meticulous. If he discovers that your waste spirit, which has been useless for 10,000 years, can suddenly cultivate, he'll know something is wrong with you just by thinking about it. Bunny who loves Donghulu, and Tang, you must be careful. Although Big Brother is very good, if he finds out you have a diary copy, the consequences would be unimaginable. Facing the kind reminders from the group members and Jian Runshui's warning, Tang Yuehua gave a bitter smile in her heart. Ask for an immortal herb. As a low cultivation etiquette teacher, how could she ask Lin Yuan for such a priceless treasure? She wasn't familiar with Lin Yuan. Why would Lin Yuan give it to her? She couldn't possibly sell her beauty, could she? Isn't this making things difficult for her? However, what Tang Yuehua didn't know was that Lin Yuan, who was sitting in the elegant room at this moment, was actually as clear as a mirror in his heart. As a cultivator of the chaos god-slaying art, Lin Yuan himself could perfectly control the violent killing intent of the god-slaying spear, achieving complete mastery over it. His claim today that he came to Moon Pavilion to have Tang Yuehua help purify his killing intent was merely a convenient excuse from beginning to end. At this time, Zhao Yun, who was concealed in the shadows, had already spread his vast mental force. Zhao Yun had thoroughly investigated the entire large Moon Pavilion, from top to bottom. The result was that no trace or aura of Tang Hao was found. It seems that old fox Tang Hao didn't escape here, Lin Yuan mused inwardly. Now that he had confirmed Tang Hao wasn't present, and through the system binding, he knew that the dignified and elegant Tang Yuehua before him indeed possessed a diary copy. Naturally, Lin Yuan's mischievous thoughts couldn't help but surface. Since he had come, how could he return empty-handed? He naturally wanted to thoroughly expose Tang Yuehua's deepest hidden secret in the diary. That is, her twisted, forbidden admiration for Tang Hao. And if possible, Lin Yuan looked at the charming and exceptionally elegant beautiful woman before him, naturally wanting to smoothly bring Tang Yuehua into his future harem. Although Tang Yuehua currently seemed like a mere vase. However, since she already possessed a diary copy and had the help of the system's guaranteed rewards, her future cultivation speed should definitely not be slow. Moreover, her noble ring spirit was actually severely underestimated. It should definitely be considered a top-tier, functionally unique domain-type support system spirit on the Douluo Continent. After all, when she first awakened, her innate spirit power was also as high as rank 9. Although a flaw in her spirit mutation prevented her from ever breaking through the rank 10 shackles in her lifetime. However, it is undeniable that this spirit's support ability in calming emotions and purifying negative states is absolutely not bad. Chapter 175, Earth-Shattering Gossip, Tang Yuehua's Forbidden Love. Thinking of this, Lin Yuan used two minds at once. While enjoying the cleansing of Tang Yuehua's gentle domain, he rapidly began writing in the diary copy in his mind. After meeting Tian Runshui this afternoon, it was confirmed that my seraphim spirit and hers indeed possess spirit compatibility. However, the attempt at a spirit fusion in the Crown Prince's mansion just now still ended in failure. Because in that instant, I could clearly sense Tian Runshui's body instinctively resisting. I also understand her concerns. Perhaps it is because once we attempt spirit fusion, under that intense resonance, it would directly expose her true spirit. Exposing her sacred seraphim, rather than the swan spirit inherited by the Heaven Do royal family. Writing this, Lin Yuan let out a wicked chuckle in his heart. Actually, what she doesn't know is that this unknown spirit fusion skill is actually absolutely dominated by my god-slaying peers. If I truly wished, even if Tian Runshui had a trace of internal resistance and rejection. In fact, as long as I tried a few more times and adopted a firmer attitude, forcing it through, I should still be able to forcefully succeed in the fusion. It's just that I haven't figured out what to do yet. If I forcibly fuse them, leading to the exposure of Tian Runshui's female identity and true status, how should I face her then? After all, Tian Runshui is the Spirit Hall's undercover agent, the future helm of Spirit Hall. And I, strictly speaking, can barely be considered part of the Heaven Do Empire faction right now. Although I have absolutely no desire to participate in those damn power struggles of the Heaven Do royal family. But I am, after all, the captain of the Heaven Do Royal Academy's first team and have enjoyed their resources. If I were to expose the earth-shattering gossip that Crown Prince Shui Qing is actually impersonated by someone from Spirit Hall in broad daylight, then, as a beneficiary, I would have to make some sort of gesture toward the Heaven Do royal family, which would be too troublesome. Therefore, the matter of forced fusion is temporarily set aside. We can slowly work on it in bed when the opportunity arises later. Afterward, Lin Yuan's writing style shifted, and the following content pointed directly at Tang Yuehua. Also, a few nights ago, that old dog Tang Hao snuck into the Heaven Do Royal Academy, attempting to harm Xiao Wu. As a result, he was caught on the spot by Zhao Yun, who severed his right arm, which was fused with a spirit bone, with a single spear strike. I originally thought that after suffering such a severe injury and dropping a realm, Tang Hao would very likely come to Moon Pavilion in Heaven Do City to seek refuge, like a stray dog. That's why today I deliberately used the excuse of wanting to purify the killing intent of my god-slaying peers, asking Tian Runshui to recommend me to Moon Pavilion to probe the situation. But under Zhao Yun's secret investigation, there was no trace of that old dog Tang Hao. Lucky for him he ran fast. Hearing this, Tang Yuehua's heart clenched fiercely, and her mood became extremely complicated. Of course, besides checking if Tang Hao was hiding in Moon Pavilion like a turtle today, I myself am actually quite interested in this Tang Yuehua. After all, from the perspective of a normal man. Although Tang Yuehua's appearance does not compare to the absolute top tier of peerless beauties like Bibi Dong and Tian Runshui. Perhaps precisely because she has long been steeped in that elegant noble etiquette and temperament. Coupled with the special nurturing from her own noble ring spirit. It results in her entire demeanor appearing as that of an extremely mature, exceptionally charming, noble noblewoman, very alluring and rich. In this unique temperament, I believe perhaps even the aloof Supreme Pontiff Bibi Dong cannot compare to her. Seeing this explicit praise, a blush of shame and anger instantly spread across Tang Yuehua's originally pale cheeks. But immediately following, Lin Yuan's final passage struck like a bolt from the blue. It's just such a pity. Such a perfect woman, full of mature charm, has unfortunately fallen for someone she absolutely should not, and cannot, love. Otherwise, given her qualifications, how could she still be single at her age? She even uttered the absurd statement that she never wants to marry for life. The reason for all of this is because the person she secretly likes and madly adores is none other than Tang Hao. This taboo love that violates ethics is her deepest secret, one that absolutely cannot be known by any other person. Boom. The instant this shocking content manifested on the diary light screen. Tang Yuehua, who was closing her eyes in the private room, using her spirit to help Lin Yuan purify the killing intent, only felt her mind go blank, as if struck by lightning. The spirit power flowing smoothly within her body suddenly stagnated, showing signs of becoming chaotic. Tang Yuehua could no longer suppress the extreme shock and shame in her heart, her face immediately turned as pale as paper. Simultaneously, within the chat group, it instantly exploded into chaos. 7 treasures little rich girl, oh my god, this is actually a forbidden, incestuous love. 7 treasures little rich girl, if I remember correctly, Tang Yuehua is the sister of the Clear Sky sect master. 7 treasures little rich girl, then she should count as Tang San's biological aunt, right? 7 treasures little rich girl, Aunt Light's older brother. This gossip is too big, I'm stuffed. Bunny who loves Tong Hulu, right, this is too incredible. Bunny who loves Douluo, I didn't expect that coming here for some gossip today, I'd end up with such an earth-shattering piece of news. Bunny who loves Douluo, if this gets out, the reputation of the Clear Sky sect will be completely ruined. The other members in the group were also shaken by this massive gossip. Even the Snow Empress in the far north couldn't help but post a shocked expression. Ice Sky Snow Lady, are human emotions truly this complex and twisted? Blazing Rose, my worldview was shattered. And at the scene, Qian Runshui looked at Tang Yuehua's body, which had instantly turned pale and was on the verge of collapsing, and secretly thought, this is bad. Although she was also incomparably shocked and disdainful of this earth-shattering gossip. She was clearer about the current predicament. Qian Runshui quickly tagged Tang Yuehua frantically in the group, issuing an extremely stern warning. I really don't swing that way, at elegant lady Tang Yuehua. Stabilize yourself, pay attention to the flow of spirit power in your body. I really don't swing that way, your emotional fluctuations are too great right now, you might even lose control of your spirit. I really don't swing that way, if you lose composure like this, Lin Yuan will immediately sense something is wrong. I really don't swing that way, do you want to get a skill? Leave request. Gastroenteritis, it's the 4th day and still not better. I had 3 IV drips over the first 3 days, and I had to rush to the emergency room after 2 AM yesterday. Today, I was woken up by pain again after 2 AM. I wanted to take leave a few days ago, but I didn't have a leave slip, so I pushed through and kept updating, which made the updates a bit later than usual. Sigh, guys, take care of your health. Chapter 176, a difficult choice between two. In reality. Hearing Qian Runshui's roar in the chat group, Tang Yuehua bit the tip of her tongue hard, the sharp pain instantly clearing her mind. She understood that in her current state of mental collapse, she could no longer continue to manifest her spirit effectively. Thus, making a prompt decision, she immediately cut off the spirit power output, interrupting the purification process. Tang Yuehua took a deep breath, trying to make her voice sound less shaky. Forcing a smile, she said to Lin Yuan, I'm truly sorry. My spirit power is a bit insufficient. The killing intent on you is too extreme, it cannot be completely purified in just a day or two. Tang Yuehua lowered her head, not daring to look into Lin Yuan's eyes. If it's convenient for you, you can come to the Moon Pavilion often, and I will slowly help you adjust. After saying this, Tang Yuehua hurriedly withdrew her spirit as if she were fleeing. Having done all this, she let out a heavy sigh of relief in her heart, her back already drenched in cold sweat. There, shouldn't be any flaws exposed, right? Tang Yuehua prayed in her heart. However, as Lin Yuan watched her panicked and flustered appearance, a very playful curve formed at the corners of his mouth. Inside the chat group at this moment, the enthusiasm of the onlookers had been completely ignited. Everyone in the group was frantically adding Tang Yuehua, the fire of gossip burning fiercely. Irritable pig farmer, at elegant lady, Hall Master Tang, don't play dead. Come out and say something. Irritable pig farmer, is this forbidden juicy gossip written in Lin Yuan's diary actually true? Daughter of the Great Sea, yeah, do you really like Tang Hao? Ice Blue Feather, this is too crazy, I can't even imagine it. Facing the overwhelming inquiries and doubts in the group, Tang Yuehua bit her lip tightly, not daring to reply with a single word. At this moment, this noble and elegant pavilion master experienced the greatest social death of her life. Lin Yuan did not expose the reason Tang Yuehua gave to her face. Instead, he acted very curious, looked at the slightly flustered beautiful woman before him, and asked softly, Hall Master Tang, I heard from His Highness the Crown Prince that when your spirit underwent awakening at the age of 6, you had level 9 and 8 spirit power. But it seems this was limited by a spirit mutation, resulting in your inability to continue to cultivate for the rest of your life. In all these years, have you not thought of any other way? Lin Yuan stared at her with burning eyes. For example, searching for or consuming some rumored heaven and earth treasures to forcibly allow you to break through the shackles of your cultivation. Hearing Lin Yuan's question that hit her right where it hurt, Tang Yuehua's heart instantly tightened. She lowered her eyes, thinking secretly to herself that she had already successfully reached level 10 through the guaranteed reward from the diary system. As long as she went to the Stardew Great Forest to obtain her first spirit ring, she should be able to start her cultivation legitimately. On the surface, however, Tang Yuehua still put on a bitter and helpless expression, sighing as she replied, You're joking. How could I not have thought of it? But I've already exhausted all my efforts over the years to try every possible method in this world, and all were in vain. She shook her head slightly and smiled bitterly. I'm already at this age, it's time to let go of this obsession. Hearing Tang Yuehua's words, Lin Yuan smiled dismissively. Hall Master Tang is truly belittling herself. What's wrong with being this age? Lin Yuan's gaze swept up and down her body without restraint, and he praised her without hesitation. In my opinion, this is exactly the most beautiful and charming time in a woman's life. After all, it was just saying nice things, it only required moving his lips and didn't require any actual action, so why not? In fact, just now, Lin Yuan had indeed considered the plan Qian Runshui proposed in the group. In order to give Tang Yuehua's cultivation breakthrough a legitimate reason and not arouse suspicion from others. Should he take the initiative to give her an immortal herb, or a treasure like a semi-immortal herb? On the surface, it would look like he was helping her break through her cultivation, but in reality, it would be a cover to prevent the diary copy from being exposed. But on second thought, the relationship between Tang Yuehua, Tang Hao, and Tang San was right there. If he generously gave her an immortal herb and helped her break through her cultivation, but she didn't end up on his side in the end, or even turned around to help Tang San and Tang Hao deal with him, wouldn't he lose out big time? Although he was indeed somewhat interested in Tang Yuehua's mature and seductive body. But to let him give away a precious semi-immortal herb for free to a potential enemy, he was still a bit reluctant. Besides, hadn't Tang Yuehua already received the guaranteed reward from the system and automatically broken through? Moreover, after these past few days, Tang Yuehua should have almost finished reading the diary content he had written over the last 2 years. Once she saw Tang Hao's true colors, if her thoughts about Tang Hao still hadn't changed at all, then no matter how much more he did now, it would all be in vain. Therefore, it was best to see Tang Yuehua's subsequent attitude regarding this matter. He couldn't be too hasty and needed to plan carefully. Thinking this, Lin Yuan stayed no longer and turned to leave the private room. However, just before he reached the door to leave, he suddenly stopped, his back to Tang Yuehua, and spoke a few words in a low tone. Hall Master Tang, to tell you the truth, I indeed possess a heaven-defying treasure that can change one's fate. It can allow you to immediately break through the shackles of your spirit, and even significantly accelerate your future cultivation speed. Lin Yuan turned his head slightly, glancing at her out of the corner of his eye. Of course, to obtain such a precious thing, a certain price must be paid. Hall Master Tang is a smart person, you should understand that there is no such thing as a free lunch in this world. Hearing Lin Yuan's blunt and explicit hint, Tang Yuehua was slightly stunned, freezing in place. She never expected that Lin Yuan's words would be so direct. What was the price Lin Yuan mentioned? She could guess it even without thinking. The only thing on her entire body that this young man before her could possibly value was likely this relatively plump physique of hers. This caused Tang Yuehua's face to instantly turn pale and then flush, feeling both ashamed and indignant, along with a hint of unspeakable humiliation. Because of the diary copy, she already knew that Lin Yuan's physical age and soul age were completely mismatched. This boy who looked only 12 or 13 had a soul that could be said to be that of a complete adult man. What he wanted was practically as clear as day. And just as Lin Yuan took a step out of the Moon Pavilion's private room door, as if he had suddenly remembered some trivial matter, he stopped again and said something nonchalantly. Oh, right, I almost forgot one thing. P.S. Brothers, I'm back. This gastroenteritis was painful for a week. I even had IV drips for 4 days. I'm about 70–80% recovered now. Regarding the points about the chat group members being shocked in the previous chapters, I went to take a look. I'll announce one thing here. I did write a certain person's name in the diary, but it was censored. That person's name cannot be written, it involves. So, it's fine as long as you get the general idea tilde. Chapter 177. As long as she's pretty and juicy enough, it's fine. Lin Yuan said without turning his head. A few nights ago, a man in black wielding a giant hammer spirit sneakily broke into the Heaven Do Royal Academy. That person actually harbored ill intentions toward my sister. Lin Yuan's tone suddenly turned cold. As a result, he was caught on the spot by my teacher, had one arm severed by a spear, and fled like a stray dog. Hearing, giant hammer spirit, and a severed one arm, Tang Yuehua felt as if she had been struck by lightning, her legs went weak, and she nearly collapsed to the ground. Lin Yuan sneered. According to my teacher, that black-robed man used the supreme secret techniques passed down in your clear sky sect. Something called ring explosion, and the great Sumeru hammer. Lin Yuan slowly turned his head, looking at Tang Yuehua, and said word by word, if I'm not mistaken, that wretched dog is likely your second brother, Tang Hao, right? After saying this, Lin Yuan ignored Tang Yuehua and strode away on his own. Meanwhile, Shui Qing, who had maintained the poise of the crown prince throughout, gave Tang Yuehua a meaningful look. Tian Runshui chuckled and said in a tone only the two of them could understand, Hall Master Tang, Lin Yuan is openly making you choose one of two options. Whether to choose your one-armed second brother or the olive branch he's extended, you should make your choice carefully. With that, Tian Runshui flicked her sleeves and quickly followed him out. They left the oppressive atmosphere of the Moon Pavilion. Tian Runshui soon caught up with Lin Yuan, and the two walked side by side on the bustling streets of Heaven Do City. After holding it in for a long time, Tian Runshui finally couldn't help herself. She nudged Lin Yuan gently with her elbow and teased in a low voice, you little brat, do you really have a way to help Tang Yuehua break through that damn spirit shackle? Tian Runshui shifted the topic, her beautiful eyes flashing with a cunning light. But, that price you mentioned earlier, it couldn't be. Tian Runshui's voice trailed off intentionally, her gaze becoming extremely bold. She even subconsciously looked down, glancing at Lin Yuan's place, and then couldn't help but burst into laughter. You little kid, your body hasn't even reached adulthood, yet your head is filled with those kinds of things all day. Tian Runshui gave him an exasperated look. Besides, you already have so many peerless beauties around you. You actually have designs on an old dandy like Tang Yuehua. Your tastes are way too heavy. Indeed, in the eyes of a peerless genius in her prime like Tian Runshui. Although Tang Yuehua was very well maintained, her skin still supple and her charm remaining. Her actual age was right there. To Tian Runshui, Tang Yuehua was definitely in the old auntie category. The age gap between Lin Yuan and Tang Yuehua was not just large, it was practically a generational gap. Thus, Tian Runshui could not understand Lin Yuan's perverse interest at all. But to Lin Yuan, what did an age gap matter? He only cared about whether the other person was good-looking, if her figure was hot enough, and if her temperament was unique enough. Like that high priestess Bo Saishi far away on Sea God Island, her actual age was even much older than Tang Yuehua's. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to call her an old ancestor. But one couldn't deny that she was extremely beautiful. Moreover, she was an extremely rare white-haired beauty with a noble, inviolable aura, and her chest was even more vast and surging like the waves. Facing such a top-tier woman, which man would care about her age? As long as she was pretty and juicy enough, it was fine. As the sound of Lin Yuan and Tian Runshui's footsteps gradually faded, the large private room returned to a deathly silence. Tang Yuehua slumped onto the red sandalwood chair, her originally dignified and elegant face now appearing incredibly pale. Her chest heaved violently, her internal struggle like a churning sea, and her expression shifted constantly. Placed before her was a massive problem comparable to a life-or-death decision. Should she stand on Tang Hao's side? Or should she choose to compromise and stand on Lin Yuan's side? This was a life-threatening question. If she chose to stand on Tang Hao's side, would the guaranteed rewards she obtained from the diary system be directly revoked or even disappear? Tang Yuehua was not stupid. On the contrary, as the master of the Moon Pavilion, her mind was extremely sharp and exquisite. Judging from Lin Yuan's current performance in the diary's content, Lin Yuan likely didn't know she had obtained a diary copy. But that didn't mean she could act recklessly. She couldn't help but ponder deeply, what exactly was the reason this mysterious system distributed diary copies to this group of women with specific identities? In truth, anyone with a bit of life experience could guess a few parts of the true intent as long as they calmed down and scrutinized it carefully. Combined with those crude words in Lin Yuan's diary and his evaluations of various beauties, Tang Yuehua estimated that the system likely wanted to help Lin Yuan more smoothly nurture and establish his harem team. The system did not use forceful means to compel these diary copy owners to do anything. It was constantly and subtly using various irresistible benefits to continuously increase their favorability toward Lin Yuan. This was the most brilliant open scheme. This was the conclusion Tang Yuehua had reached after thinking it over by herself these past few days. And most fatally, within those inviolable diary rules, there was one written very clearly. All instance owners were absolutely forbidden from harming Lin Yuan through any form or means. If she chose to stand on Tang Hao's side now, and Tang Hao was clearly a potential enemy of Lin Yuan, it meant she would be indirectly harming Lin Yuan. Once she crossed that bottom line, she would inevitably face severe punishment from the system. She would be ruthlessly disqualified from the binding and lose the diary copy permanently. Even more terrifyingly, she would lose all memories regarding the diary and might even have the hard-won cultivation increases revoked. At the thought of this, Tang Yuehua couldn't help but feel a chill all over. She had been trapped by the 9th-level spirit power shackle for decades, enduring mockery in secret. Now that a miracle had finally arrived and she could finally cultivate like a normal spirit master. Was she really going to give up this hard-won hope for a vague, even taboo, emotion? She was truly unwilling, 10,000 times unwilling. But recalling Lin Yuan's aggressive gaze and words just now, Today was her first formal meeting with Lin Yuan, yet he had so bluntly proposed such an obvious hint regarding her body. This made a noble lady who had always stood high above feel extremely humiliated, making it impossible for her to decide for a moment. After a long time, within the empty private room, Tang Yuehua's long sigh echoed. Forget it, there's no use thinking about this now, I can't make a rational judgment. Tang Yuehua thought to herself that since her cultivation had already broken through to level 10, the immediate priority was to obtain a spirit ring. She decided to return to the Clear Sky sect first. Firstly, she could find out if Tang Hao had returned to the sect after being injured, and secondly, it was for her own cultivation. Regardless, she would first have the sect elders hunt the most suitable spirit beast for her to serve as her first spirit ring. Chapter 178, Misfortune Card, Binding Tang San. Meanwhile, inside the chat group, Xiao Wu, Ning Rongrong, and Du Guyan were eagerly waiting, hoping to get some juicy gossip about Tang Yuehua. However, they had been at her for a long while and had waited even longer. Yet, Tang Yuehua, whose nickname was Elegant Lady, remained silent, refusing to reply with even a single word. This made the gossip-hungry young girls feel quite bored, and they curled their lips in disappointment. Since the person involved refused to come out and admit anything, there was no point in chatting amongst themselves, so they gradually dispersed and stopped questioning her. The scene shifts to the extreme north. Inside a magnificent snow lady palace, translucent and carved entirely from 10,000-year-old mysterious ice. At this moment, the Ice Emperor, dressed in a long emerald green dress, was gracefully staying at the residence of the dominator of the extreme north, the Snow Empress. The air in the palace was bone-chillingly cold, but for these two rulers of the extreme north, it was the most comfortable environment. The Ice Emperor's emerald eyes flickered with the light of contemplation as she looked at the stunning woman sitting on the frozen throne. Sister Snow Empress, the Ice Emperor said with some distress, tell me, what exactly do we need to do to better obtain high-value rewards from the diary system? The Ice Emperor pouted, playing with a strand of hair hanging over her chest. If we just keep waiting like this every day, passively receiving those basic guaranteed rewards. While those guaranteed rewards can indeed steadily increase our cultivation, I always feel that the speed is a bit too slow. The Ice Emperor's concern was not without reason. The 400,000-year heavenly tribulation was like a sword of Damocles hanging over her head, liable to fall at any moment. She urgently needed more and more powerful rewards to increase her foundation. After hearing the Ice Emperor's complaints, the Snow Empress sitting on the throne nodded slightly. Her peerless face, as flawless as white snow, always maintained a sense of coldness and calm. The Snow Empress's deep gaze seemed to penetrate the endless wind and snow. She pondered for a moment before slowly speaking. Ice Emperor, I can understand your feelings. In fact, the pattern for obtaining those generous grand prizes from the diary is already quite obvious. The Snow Empress said, the best way is actually to find a way to appear before that human named Lin Yuan. As long as we have an interaction with him in reality, causing him to have a deep impression of us, such that he mentions our names and affairs more in the diary. Then the probability of us obtaining exclusive grand prizes will increase exponentially. Hearing this method, the Ice Emperor's eyes first lit up, but then dimmed again as she looked troubled. But sister, we are spirit beasts ourselves, and vicious beasts of the extreme north at that. To enter the human world, our only way is to abandon our original forms and transform into human shapes to approach him. Speaking of this, the Ice Emperor's brows furrowed tightly as she voiced the core problem. But if we really transform into humans rashly, travel all the way to the Heaven Do Empire, and suddenly appear before Lin Yuan, such a deliberate coincidence would be far too obvious. Doing this would most likely directly expose the fact that we are also owners of a diary copy. The Ice Emperor's words caused the Snow Empress to fall into silence as well. Indeed, for two rulers of the extreme north who had never set foot in the human world to suddenly transform and seek out a human youth they had no connection with. As long as the other party wasn't a fool, he would instantly guess that they were there for the diary. The Ice Emperor also let out a heavy sigh and said, the risk of doing this is simply too great. If we accidentally expose the secret that we actually possess a diary copy, I don't know if this diary system will hand down some terrifying punishment. If it directly strips us of our eligibility or even obliterates us, the loss would truly outweigh the gain. The two overlords of the extreme north were now speechless in this magnificent ice palace. On one side was the massive temptation to change their fate and survive the heavenly tribulation. On the other side was the unknown risk of exposing their secret and suffering a backlash from the system. Even though they had lived for hundreds of thousands of years, facing this magical diary copy, they felt stuck in a dilemma for a moment, unsure of what to do. The night was deep, and stars dotted the sky over Heaven Do City. With the arrival of midnight, the familiar mechanical prompt of the diary system arrived in Lin Yuan's mind as scheduled. Ding! Congratulations to the host for completing today's diary entry. Today's rewards are being settled. Congratulations to the host for obtaining today's reward, Misfortune Card. With a thought from Lin Yuan, a card emitting a faint black, eerie light appeared out of thin air in his palm. He looked closely, and the system panel immediately displayed a detailed introduction of the card. Misfortune Card, a special consumable causality type item. Effect description, the host can designate a specific person to use it on. After use, the target person will encounter various unavoidable bouts of bad luck and extremely negative events for a certain period of time. Anything from choking on water or tripping on flat ground to chi deviation or sudden disasters falling from the sky is possible. Looking at the Misfortune Card in his hand flickering with an eerie black light, a cold arc curled at the corner of Lin Yuan's mouth. He hardly thought about it, there was no need for any hesitation. He directly and firmly locked onto the target for this card in his mind, Tang San. Why Tang San? Lin Yuan's logic was actually very simple and crude. Since that old fogey Tang Hao, your father, dared to sneak into the Heaven Do Royal Academy in the middle of the night, attempting to make a move on Xiao Wu. Although Zhao Yun had already acted decisively and severed a right arm from Tang Hao, and even confiscated a precious 80,000-year-old Clear Sky Sect legacy spirit bone as interest for his foolishness. This was still far from enough. If a son is not taught, it is the father's fault. Then if the father acts like a prick, the son naturally has to suffer along with him. He, Lin Yuan, hadn't collected any interest from Tang San's side yet. Tang San was Tang Hao's biological son, father and son shared the same heart. Using this relationship of collective responsibility to deal with Tang San was, in Lin Yuan's view, simply perfectly reasonable. System, use the Misfortune Card on Tang San. Lin Yuan sneered in his heart and muttered silently. As soon as he finished speaking, the black card in his hand instantly turned into a wisp of invisible black gas. This black gas directly escaped into the void realm, ignoring the distance of space, and headed straight for Nuoding City in Fasanua province. And at this time, in the middle of the night, far away in Dormitory 7 of the Nuoding Junior Soul Master Academy, it was peaceful. Tang-san, who was sleeping soundly on his bed, rolled over and smacked his lips, sleeping very sweetly. He would never have dreamed that because of his father's death-seeking behavior, a disaster from the heavens had already firmly locked onto him. He was still completely unaware of what was to come in the days ahead. He had no idea what kind of miserable, unavoidable bad things were waiting for him up ahead. Chapter 179, Ning Rongrong, who loves watching the drama. On the other side, the owners of the diary copy also welcomed an exciting moment. But today, the situation underwent some changes. It was unclear whether the system's mischievous streak was acting up or if this was a deliberate open scheme. Before the daily rewards were drawn, the system's mechanical voice suddenly echoed in everyone's minds and within that virtual chat group. It mercilessly announced a brand new rule. System announcement, diary copy rules updated. Starting today, to motivate all instance owners and increase interaction within the group. The real names of all daily reward recipients and the specific reward items obtained will no longer be hidden in any form. All information will be publicly announced to everyone on their diary interface. As soon as this sudden new rule came out, all the group members who hadn't rested yet were stunned. No longer hidden. Public to everyone. This meant that in the future, if anyone was lucky enough to draw a peerless cultivation technique or a top-tier treasure, everyone in the group would know immediately. This was simply putting the winner on a roasting fire. Not only would it invite extreme envy from others, but it would also lead to endless jealousy, suspicion, and frantic testing. Of course, this would also draw people toward Lin Yuan. After all, previous rewards were hidden, unless someone like Du Guyan voluntarily exposed them, otherwise, others wouldn't know at all. Didn't Luo Long go to the Heaven Do Royal Academy because she envied the cultivation technique reward Du Guyan received? And now, the system was using a blatant open scheme. Seeing those close to Lin Yuan obtaining such good things, would those of you far away not be tempted? Before the girls could recover from the shock of this new rule, today's drawing result had already turned into a line of extremely eye-catching golden characters. It scrolled high-profilely across the very top of everyone's diary interface in the chat group. Bite. Congratulations to Tang Yuehua for receiving today's reward. Congratulations to Tang Yuehua for receiving an exclusive reward, Heaven and Earth Rare Treasure, Spirit Origin Completion Stone. With the appearance of this announcement, the entire chat group instantly fell into a deathly silence, followed by a frenzy of messages and exclamations. At this time, far outside Heaven Do City, Tang Yuehua was sitting in a hidden carriage, preparing to rush back to the clear sky sect overnight. Looking at the magical, crystal-clear jade stone floating in front of her, emitting a seven-colored flowing light. Her whole body froze, and her delicate frame couldn't stop trembling slightly. Spirit Origin Completion Stone, a rare treasure condensed from the power of Heaven and Earth's creation. Effect description, can be directly integrated into a spirit master's body to perfectly repair and complete the malignant defects of a mutated spirit. It can greatly enhance the consumer's innate aptitude and comprehension ability, reshape their foundation, and significantly increase their innate spirit power origin. It can completely break through the Heaven and Earth shackles of innate rank 9 spirit power, allowing the spirit master's cultivation to proceed without obstacles, progressing at 1,000 miles a day. Looking at the detailed introduction of this origin divine stone on the system panel, Tang Yuehua's breathing instantly became rapid, and her high chest rose and fell violently. With this Heaven and Earth rare treasure, she could completely repair the mutation defect of her noble ring spirit. Tang Yuehua was an extremely intelligent woman. She knew very well in her heart that this was actually a blatant open scheme given to her by the diary system. The system seemed to be silently telling her, I have already given you such a heaven-defying good thing. If you still don't know what's good for you and still want to oppose Lin Yuan, then it would really be somewhat unreasonable. Meanwhile, in the chat group, because Tang Yuehua had suddenly obtained such a heaven-defying treasure, messages were frantically flooding the screen. Among them, the most active speakers were mainly the new group members who had just joined, including Silver Dragon King Ji Yuina, Emerald Swan Bai Ji, Hell Demon Dragon King ZG, Ice Emperor, Snow Empress, and the Emperor Auspicious Beast. Although these big shots of the Spirit Beast world had already received guaranteed rewards from the system, such as increasing their cultivation, compared to the rare treasure Tang Yuehua drew tonight that could directly reshape one's origin, it simply paled in comparison and was completely not worth mentioning. Darling of fate, wow, an elegant lady, is this Heaven and Earth rare treasure you obtained really as magical as the system's introduction says? Inside the carriage, Tang Yuehua had already integrated that Spirit Origin Completion Stone directly into her body without hesitation. She closed her eyes and could indeed feel a wonderful transformation happening deep within her body and spirit with incomparable clarity. Since it had already been made public by the system, she knew she could no longer continue to play dead and lurk. She simply took a deep breath and started chatting with everyone directly in the chat group. Elegant lady, this treasure is indeed very useful. I can feel the spirit's origin being repaired. Elegant lady, but as for what kind of excellent effect it will ultimately achieve, I suppose I won't truly know until after I obtain my first spirit ring. Not long after Tang Yuehua popped up to reply. At this time, Ning Rongrong, who always loved watching the drama, immediately seized the opportunity and asked that gossip question again. 7 treasures little rich girl, hee, call Master Tang, since you've come out. 7 treasures little rich girl, so, what brother Lin Yuan said in the diary today about that kind of feeling you have for him, is it true? Seeing this blunt question, Tang Yuehua herself in the carriage instantly fell into a brief silence, her face full of complexity. After a long time, she let out a long sigh and replied in the group. Elegant lady, it was indeed true before. Elegant lady, but after I carefully finished reading the previous contents of the diary these past few days, my thoughts have completely changed. Elegant lady, that obsession which shouldn't have existed, I think I should let it go. At this moment, the 100,000-year blue silver Emperor Yin, who usually lurked silently and didn't often chat, suddenly spoke up. Yin, it's a good thing that you could change your thoughts and see reality clearly. Yin, Yuehua, you should have also seen Lin Yuan's speculations in the diary about how Tang Hao plotted against me back then, right? Yin, although what Lin Yuan said doesn't have any hard evidence for the time being. Yin, however, just by following that line of thought and carefully recalling the various details at that time, I feel that the more I think about it, the more something feels wrong, even chilling. Seeing Yin's message, Xiao Wu immediately chimed in the group, showing a united front. Bunny who loves Tonghulu, yeah, Sister Yin is absolutely right. Bunny who loves Tonghulu, back then, Tang Hao clearly knew Sister Yin was pregnant and was at her weakest, most in need of protection. Bunny who loves Tonghulu, moreover, he clearly knew Sister was a transformed 100,000-year spirit beast and was extremely likely to be targeted by Spirit Hall. Bunny who loves Tonghulu, then, as a husband, shouldn't he have found a remote town to live in seclusion and take care of the pregnancy? Bunny who loves Tonghulu, he actually ran around everywhere with Sister Yin, who was about to give birth. This is definitely not right at first glance, it was absolutely intentional. Chapter 180 Xiao Wu, Brother is different. Return to the Clear Sky Sect. Regarding the hypocrisy of human spirit masters, the Hell Demon Dragon King ZG also snorted coldly and expressed her views in the chat group. Abyssal Demoness, hey, human greed is something you can never imagine. Abyssal Demoness, for human spirit masters, 100,000-year spirit ring is a heavenly temptation enough to drive them crazy. Abyssal Demoness, no human spirit master is unmoved when facing a 100,000-year spirit ring, this is their inherent inferiority. Abyssal Demoness, even that Lin Yuan who writes the diary, if it weren't for the existence of that heaven-defying system. Abyssal Demoness, let's see if he would be moved if a 100,000-year spirit ring were within his reach. Seeing ZG talk about Lin Yuan like this, Xiao Wu was a bit unhappy and immediately refuted grumpily. Bunny who loves Douluo, I don't know if brother would be moved by other 100,000-year spirit rings. Bunny who loves Douluo, but he definitely, absolutely won't be moved by the spirit ring on my body. I believe him. As soon as Xiao Wu's full love-brained speech came out, many people in the chat group were directly silenced. It was simply unbearable to watch. Ji Yuina even directly sent a sneer and a speechless emoji picture in the group. Silver Dragon, hee, truly foolish beyond belief. Silver Dragon, I don't know what kind of soup this human has fed you to make you so devoted. Silver Dragon, have you forgotten that Lin Yuan mentioned in his diary how that hypocrite Tang San plotted for your spirit ring? Silver Dragon, human disguise is the most terrifying. How can you still be so naive now, without even a bit of wariness? Facing the questioning and lecture from the company lord of spirit beasts, Xiao Wu still stubbornly retorted. Bunny who loves Douluo, he is different from that hypocrite Tang San, he will never harm me. Silver Dragon, hee. ... A few days passed in the blink of an eye. After a long journey, Tang Yuehua finally returned to the secluded and closed Clear Sky Sect through layers of iron chain bridges. Regarding Tang Yuehua's sudden return, the current sect master Tang Xiao, as well as several powerful elders in the sect, were all very happy. Because every time Tang Yuehua returned from the outside world, she would use her wealth to bring a large amount of supplies to the sect. Back then, because of the great disaster caused by Tang Hao, the Clear Sky Sect was forced to close its gates for so many years, isolated from the world. If Tang Yuehua hadn't been outside all year round, continuously sending them resources, then the daily lives of the low-level disciples in the sect would have become even more difficult, barely maintaining food and clothing. This is also why, when the Clear Sky Sect went into seclusion back then, only Tang Yuehua, a member of the direct bloodline, was left outside to work hard. As the pavilion master of Heaven Do City's Moon Pavilion, she was specifically responsible for teaching etiquette to the royalty and nobility. She could contact many powerful and influential people, so the wealth she could obtain was also very staggering. Of course, the wealth mentioned here only refers to those ordinary gold and silver treasures and common living supplies. As for the extremely rare and massive top-tier spirit master resources needed to set up a high-level mimicry cultivation environment, with Tang Yuehua's strength and wealth, she simply couldn't touch them, nor could she purchase them in large quantities. It could also be said this way. For those Clear Sky Sect disciples who were forced into seclusion, their current daily cultivation was extremely dull and tedious. Besides the most basic meditation for spirit power, they could only practice a disorder-splitting wind hammer method day after day. Generally speaking, they simply didn't have the conditions to enjoy the support of the mimicry cultivation environment that only high-level academies outside had, unless the Clear Sky Sect came out of seclusion. However, this time, Tang Yuehua had decided to rush back on a whim because her cultivation had achieved a breakthrough. So, the supplies she carried were actually pitifully small compared to the past. Inside the simple and solemn meeting hall of the Clear Sky Sect. After Tang Yuehua had a brief chat with her elder brother Tang Xiao and several white-haired elders, she took a deep breath and then spoke solemnly, stating the real reason for her temporary return to the sect this time. Big brother, elders, Tang Yuehua said softly, suppressing the excitement in her heart. My cultivation has finally broken through to level 10. I rushed back this time because I want to ask the sect to send someone out of the mountains to accompany me to hunt a suitable spirit beast as my first spirit ring. Upon learning that Tang Yuehua's cultivation, which had been stuck for decades, had actually broken through to level 10. All the elders present widened their eyes in shock, and some even stood up in loss of composure. Howling Sky Douluo Tang Xiao even flashed forward, arriving directly in front of his sister Tang Yuehua as if using teleportation. He excitedly reached out his broad palm and pressed it onto Tang Yuehua's slender forearm, immediately investigating with pure spirit power. A few seconds later, a light of wild joy erupted in Tang Xiao's eyes. He found that the spirit power circulation in Tang Yuehua's body was endless, and she had indeed successfully broken through from level 9 to the realm of level 10. While being overjoyed, Tang Xiao was also somewhat puzzled and quickly asked. Yuehua, this is simply a miracle. How did your bottleneck, which has troubled you for so many years, suddenly break through? Facing her elder brother's inquiry, Tang Yuehua had already thought of her excuse on the way. She shook her head with a forced bitter smile, but her eyes held a trace of relief as she said softly, Big brother, you know that all these years, I have never stopped meditating and cultivating. Moreover, I have been using the wealth of the Moon Pavilion outside to look for various precious medicinal herbs to slowly nourish my body. Just a few days ago, for some reason, I suddenly felt that the cultivation in my body had completely loosened. Tang Yuehua paused and said apologetically, this is also why I was so urgent and decided to rush back temporarily. Because I left in such a hurry, the living supplies I brought back this time are a bit less than before. Hearing this reasonable explanation, Tang Xiao couldn't help but laugh out loud. Supplies don't matter at all. Those are just external things. The remaining grain in the sect can still last for quite a while. For you to be able to break through the shackles of innate level 9 is a great thing for the sect. Of course, this was actually Tang Xiao comforting Tang Yuehua. After all, Tang Yuehua's age was there. She had long passed the optimal age for cultivation, and after so many years, she had only broken through by one level. Who knew if after she obtained her first spirit ring, her spirit power would once again be unable to advance an inch, just like before? Would it take another few decades of tempering to barely increase her spirit power by one level? ... Quote closing curly bracket closing square bracket comma. Chapter 181, The Two Daughters of the Zhu Family Escape. Subsequently, Tang Xiao made a decision. Very well, since you have made a breakthrough, this first spirit ring absolutely cannot be handled carelessly. In 2 days, I will personally set out and take you to the Stardo Great Forest to handpick the most suitable spirit beast for you. Tang Xiao looked at his sister and said thoughtfully, with the special purification characteristics of your noble ring spirit, you should be most suitable for the pure support system path, right? You've also worked hard traveling all this way. First, take a good rest within the sect for a few days. During these few days, the elders and I will also discuss what kind of spirit beast would be most suitable to hunt for your first spirit ring. In fact, the reason Tang Xiao chose to go the long way to the Stardo Great Forest instead of the closer spirit hunting forest was also due to extremely helpless considerations. Because those spirit hunting forests on the continent that raised low-level spirit beasts were generally guarded by Spirit Hall's heavy troops. To enter and hunt spirit beasts, one needed to present a special warrant token issued by Spirit Hall. And their Clear Sky sect was currently in an extremely sensitive state of seclusion. If they took a token to the spirit hunting forest, it would mean exposing themselves right under Spirit Hall's nose, which was clearly inappropriate. Therefore, to safely obtain a spirit ring, it was best to go to those unmanaged wild great forests. For example, the Stardo Great Forest or the Sunset Forest. But since Tang Xiao, a super Douluo, was personally taking Tang Yuehu out, safety was naturally not a concern. The preferred destination was naturally the Stardo Great Forest, which had the richest variety of spirit beasts and the most choices. Listening to Tang Xiao's thorough arrangements and protection, Tang Yuehu smiled slightly and nodded, then thank you very much, big brother. During the few days while Tang Yuehu returned to the Clear Sky sect and prepared for the sect to help her hunt her first spirit ring. At the other end of the continent in the Douluo Empire, a major event also occurred within the Yuming Duke's manor. Ever since that day in the imperial study when Dai Yudian gave the Zhu family the final ultimatum, the entire Zhu family had been shrouded in a layer of suffocating dark clouds. Dai Yudian gave Zhu Ming exactly 1 month. He ordered him to investigate why the Hell White Tiger spirit fusion skill between Dai Wuxi, Dai Mubai, Zhu Zuyun, and Zhu Zuqing had completely failed without any warning. Dai Yudian's words were very clear. If the reason wasn't found within a month, the entire Yuming Duke's manor would be held accountable. As the current head of the Zhu family, Zhu Ming actually knew better than anyone. From the very beginning, there was no way to find a reason for this matter. The sudden mutation of the spirit origin was simply not something that could be investigated through conventional means in a mere month. Since he couldn't deliver results either way, and it would even lead to his 2 exceptionally talented daughters becoming playthings for the imperial family to vent their anger on. Zhu Ming made a firm decision. He would never let his daughters become sacrifices in this political whirlpool. He planned to take a risk and have his 2 daughters find the most suitable opportunity to escape Douluo City. When Zhu Ming revealed the entire plan in the secret chamber, Zhu Zuyun was initially somewhat hesitant and worried. Although she also wanted to escape this cage, she was worried that if the 2 sisters just up and left, what would happen to the remaining Zhu family if the Douluo imperial family became enraged? Would her father's life be in danger? But regarding this matter, as the head of the family, Zhu Ming's eyes flashed with the light of a shrewd schemer. He had obviously already devised a foolproof plan and escape strategy in his heart, so they didn't need to worry about the family's safety at all. Time was tight, and delays could lead to trouble. Zhu Ming ultimately set the escape time decisively for an extremely dark night. That day happened to be the time of the Douluo City Guard rotation, when defenses were weakest and the guards on duty were most prone to fatigue in the dead of night. In the backyard of the Duke's manor, the cold wind howled. Zhu Ming looked solemnly at his 2 daughters, who had already changed into nimble night-traveling clothes and were ready to depart. He lowered his voice, his tone carrying an unquestionable seriousness as he gave the 2 girls his final instructions. Listen well, this journey is long and fraught with danger. Furthermore, you have at most this 1 night to escape and put some distance behind you. Once dawn breaks and the city gates open, the news will leak, and the imperial family's pursuers will come after you. So, your speed must be fast. After saying that, Zhu Ming turned around. Let her take the 2 of you and leave the Douluo Empire overnight. As Zhu Ming's voice fell, a ghost-like figure of a man in black walked out silently from the shadows. Zhu Ming looked at this tall man in black with an incredibly cold gaze and issued an order. On this journey, you must escort the 2 young misses safely beyond the borders of the Douluo Empire. From the moment you step out of this courtyard, you will no longer be a member of my Zhu family. The only thing you must do is follow the orders of the 2 young misses and protect their safety even at the cost of your life. Do you understand? The man in black knelt on one knee, her eyes showing absolute obedience. She nodded respectfully, indicating without any hesitation that she completely understood the Duke's instructions. This person was a top-tier death soldier secretly cultivated by the Zhu family with countless efforts. She was not just a loyal death soldier, but also an agility attack system spirit saint expert with a cultivation level as high as rank 76. Most importantly, because her spirit was not the Zhu family's Hell Civet. Even if she mysteriously disappeared today along with the 2 young misses, it would be very difficult for the Douluo Dai family to trace this death soldier when they conducted their enraged investigation afterward. With such a powerful and clean background agility attack system spirit saint taking Zhu Zuyun and Zhu Zuqing away overnight in the shadows. Zhu Ming felt somewhat more at ease. Subsequently, this black-clad death soldier stood up and pulled down a corner of her face mask, revealing a delicate yet cold face. She looked at Zhu Zuyun and Zhu Zuqing with a determined gaze, her voice slightly hoarse. Young misses, you may call me Hongqiu from now on. From this moment forward, Hongqiu's life belongs to you. I will use my life to protect your safety. This death soldier named Hongqiu was one of several commoner orphans secretly adopted by the Zhu family from a young age. Among all the adopted orphans, Hongqiu had the best cultivation talent and the most resilient character. To cultivate her into the family's trump card for a rainy day, the Zhu family had spent a significant amount of resources in secret over the years. And Hongqiu also knew extremely well how to endure and disguise herself. She had been kept hidden in the shadows and had never truly displayed her spirit or spirit saint level strength in front of any outsiders. So Zhu Ming was not worried at all that the Douluo imperial family would discover her background, let alone link her to the Zhu family's escape. Training troops for 1,000 days is for their use in a single moment. Now is the time for Hongqiu to repay the Zhu family. P.S. Seeking recommendation votes, monthly votes, collections, and follows tilde. Chapter 182, The Drama King Nether Duke. Looking at the loyal spirit saint death sworn before her, a trace of complexity flashed in Zhu Zuyun's beautiful eyes as her thoughts rolled slightly. In fact, just now when her father summoned the death sworn, she had originally wanted to tell him that they didn't need an escort and could leave on their own. This was because both sisters now possessed a guaranteed reward from the Diaries system, the 1,000-mile teleportation talisman. Although they didn't have many of these life-saving talismans, they were definitely enough for their needs. As long as they crushed a talisman, it could teleport them a great distance away from Douluo City in a very short time. However, just as the words reached her lips, Zhu Zuyun calmly considered a more realistic issue. That was, whether it was her or her sister Zhu Zuqing, their current spirit power cultivation levels were simply too low. One was a level 30+ spirit elder, and the other was a spirit master who had just achieved a breakthrough to level 19. With such meager strength, if they didn't have a powerful guard to protect them. Then on their long journey to the Heaven Do Empire to seek refuge with Lin Yuan at the Heaven Do Royal Academy, There was a high probability they would encounter various unpredictable dangers. They might not even make it out of the Douluo border before encountering bandits or losing their lives to a high-level spirit beast. While the teleportation talismans could save their lives, they couldn't just teleport every time they ran into trouble. Therefore, to be safe, Zhu Zuyun eventually swallowed her words and said nothing, accepting Hongshu's accompaniment. The night wind howled and dark clouds obscured the moon as Douluo City fell into the deepest darkness. After confirming there were no eyes from the Imperial secret agents nearby, Hongshu took advantage of the excellent nocturnal cover to lead Zhu Zuyun and Zhu Zuqing. The three figures silently scaled the high walls of the Yuming Duke's manor and quickly escaped. Using the night as cover, they avoided the patrolling city defense force and completely vanished into the vast darkness of Douluo City. Time passed minute by minute, and the long, oppressive night finally ended. When the sky began to brighten slightly, inside the Yuming Duke's manor, the early rising servants of the Zhu family carried washing utensils as usual toward the two young Mrs. Chambers to attend to their morning routines. However, when they respectfully pushed open the doors and saw the empty beds, they were instantly scared to the point of soul flying away and spirit scattering. The servants discovered in horror that the two young misses were actually gone. Some of their personal belongings were also missing. They ran frantically to the main courtyard, prepared to inform the master and madam of this major event. However, when the servants urgently knocked on the door of the master bedroom, they were surprised to find that the master and madam were both sleeping very soundly, as if nothing could disturb them. After shouting anxiously outside the door for a good while, a trace of sluggish movement finally came from inside the room. On the bed, Zhu Ming's face twitched slightly, and he frowned with extreme realism. He feigned the appearance of someone just awakened from a very deep sleep. It's early morning, what's with all this shouting outside? Where are your manners? What exactly has happened? Why are you so flustered? The servant outside was sweating profusely, their legs shaking, and they reported loudly with a sob in their voice, it's bad. Master, something terrible has happened. The eldest young miss and second young miss, both young misses' rooms are empty. They've all disappeared. Upon hearing this, Zhu Ming, who had been pretending to be bleary-eyed and nonchalant, immediately turned pale with shock. What did you say? Zhu Ming let out an incredulous and furious cry, becoming completely awake. He didn't even bother to put on his outer robes, simply throwing on an inner garment and rushing out of bed barefoot. He slammed the door open, pushed aside the servant blocking the way, and rushed toward the courtyard where Zhu Zuyun and Zhu Zuqing resided with burning urgency. Kicking the doors open, Zhu Ming searched every single corner of his two daughters' rooms meticulously. The result was naturally that they were empty, they were indeed gone. After confirming this, Zhu Ming's eyes instantly became bloodshot, and veins bulged on his forehead, making him look like a mad lion that had lost its reason. Search, everyone go and search. Zhu Ming stood in the courtyard and let out a furious roar toward the sky, his voice shaking the tiles of the entire Yuming Duke's manor. Even if you have to be digging 3 feet into the ground, you must find their whereabouts today. Send out all the elites of the manor immediately. Go to every corner of Douluo City and every checkpoint and major road outside the city to search thoroughly. Zhu Ming panted heavily, his eyes filled with anxiety and uncontrollable rage. He violently flicked his sleeve and shouted at the butler beside him, someone, prepare the carriage. Forget it, I'll go myself. With such a major incident occurring, 2 prospective imperial concubines have mysteriously vanished. I must go to the palace first to personally beg for your majesty's forgiveness, report this matter, and request the city defense force's assistance in the search. Zhu Ming rushed to the palace gates alone at his fastest speed. Without even waiting for the standard layers of notification, he directly displayed his Nether Duke medallion and hurried deep into the inner palace. Arriving outside the imperial study, he anxiously grabbed a leading eunuch attendant on duty. Zhu Ming commanded in a low voice, quick, go in and report to your majesty immediately, say that the Nether Duke has a matter of life and death urgency and requests an audience. Seeing the Duke in such a sweat-drenched state, the attendant didn't dare delay for a second and ran into the imperial study, scrambling and crawling. Before long, the decree of the Douluo Great Emperor, Diaries, came from within. Summon Zhu Ming for an audience. Zhu Ming took a deep breath, quickly adjusted the anxious and fearful expressions on his face, and strode into the imperial study. Inside the imperial study, Diaries said coldly, Zhu Ming, it's so early in the morning, what exactly has happened? What kind of world-shaking matter could make you, a dignified Nether Duke, this frantic? Hearing this, Zhu Ming dropped to one knee before the imperial desk with a thud. His expression was very unsightly, and his voice was low to the extreme, your majesty, something terrible has happened. Zhu Ming looked up, his eyes full of grief as he gritted his teeth and said, my 2 rebellious daughters, Zhu Yun and Zhu Qing. For some unknown reason, they suddenly vanished completely from the Yuming Duke's manor last night. As soon as these words were spoken, the air in the imperial study seemed to freeze instantly. Upon hearing this, Diaries slammed his hands down and stood up from his dragon throne, his eyes wide with sudden rage. Zhu Ming, what do you mean by that? Diaries' voice was like rolling thunder, exploding within the imperial study. Are you saying that your 2 living daughters vanished into thin air from within the heavily guarded Yuming Duke's manor? P.S. I spent the whole day moving house today and only finished around evening. The update is late, sorry tilde. Chapter 183, The Clash of Old Foxes. Diaries looked into Zhu Ming's eyes, his tone filled with thick killing intent and extreme suspicion. Zhu Ming, oh Zhu Ming, do you take me for a 3-year-old child? Give me the truth, are you sure it wasn't you who secretly let them go? Facing Diaries' interrogation, Zhu Ming did not appear overly flustered. He merely gave an extremely miserable, bitter smile and said in a desolate tone, your majesty, please be the judge. You know my character. The Douluo imperial family and my Zhu family have intermarried for generations. This deep bond of shared honor and disgrace for over 10,000 years stands here, greater than the heavens. Even if I had the audacity of the heavens, how could I be so reckless as to risk the execution of my entire clan just to let them leave? Zhu Ming raised his head, continuing his sophistry with tears and snot streaming down his face. Moreover, their 2 spirits have undergone a rare mutation. This matter concerns the very foundation of the empire. I still haven't investigated the cause clearly even now, how could I possibly let them go? Seeing Diaries' expression soften slightly, Zhu Ming quickly threw out the explanation he had prepared long ago. Zhu Ming said through gritted teeth, last night, I might have been too careless. Without any suspicion, I drank the cup of water they prepared for me. Thinking back now, it is highly likely that someone spiked that water beforehand with an extremely rare, colorless, and odorless potent sleeping pill. Zhu Ming's face was filled with frustration and anger as he beat his chest and stamped his feet, saying, it was precisely because of that bowl of water that one slept very heavily all night. This morning, the servants of the manor called out to me from outside the door for a long time before I finally jolted awake, as if from a deep dream. This matter is absolutely true. If your majesty does not believe me, you can send the Royal Imperial Guard to my manor to inquire at any time. Immediately after, Zhu Ming hurried to express his loyalty. Your majesty, before coming to the palace to beg for your forgiveness, I had already made emergency deployments. I have dispatched all the elite forces from the Duke's manor to begin a carpet search both inside and outside Douluo City. Zhu Ming guaranteed solemnly, please rest assured, your majesty, once their tracks are discovered, my men will surely capture these two rebellious daughters and bring them back. When that time comes, even if I must sacrifice my own kin for the sake of justice, I will certainly bring them before the throne to await your majesty's judgment. Zhu Ming spoke these words with great conviction and a sense of righteousness. However, Dai Yudian only narrowed his eyes slightly, looking coldly at the kneeling Zhu Ming below. Both of them were old foxes who could devour people without leaving a trace. How could they not understand exactly what scheme the other was plotting? Zhu Ming understood this iron-blooded emperor's temperament very well, and Dai Yudian, naturally, also understood Zhu Ming, this calculating nether duke, perfectly. Dai Yudian snorted coldly in his heart, cursing silently. This insidious old fox, trying to deceive me with such petty tricks. What colorless and odorless sleeping pill? A dignified spirit Douluo of over rank 80 could be knocked out by a sedative. What kind of sleeping pill is that? It's simply the most ridiculous thing in the world. However, even though Dai Yudian's heart was as clear as a mirror, he couldn't lash out on the spot. Because on the surface, Zhu Ming's words were airtight. He had even taken the initiative to invite the imperial family to investigate, lowering his posture to the extreme. Furthermore, there was that inseparable marriage alliance between the Zhu family and the Dai family. The Douluo imperial family could absolutely not heavily punish the deeply rooted Zhu family over a disappearance case without concrete evidence. If this had happened to any other prince or noble, Dai Yudian would likely have been in a thunderous rage long ago, directly ordering the seizure of their home, the extermination of their clan, and severe punishment through collective responsibility. But for the Zhu family, he couldn't do that. At most, he could only give them a symbolic warning and punishment. In the end, although the Zhu family was merely an appendage used by his Douluo Dai family to stabilize imperial power in terms of political status, the imperial family also needed to constantly consider the other family's emotions and face. Otherwise, if the Zhu family were pushed too far and chose to rebel, it would definitely be of no benefit to the Douluo imperial family, it would only allow others to reap the rewards. Moreover, what made Dai Yudian feel even more constrained was, now, the two most talented legitimate daughters of this generation in the Zhu family had already successfully escaped. Among them, Zhu Zuqing even had innate full spirit power. With such talent, as long as she didn't die prematurely, she would surely become a titled Douluo in the future if no accidents occurred. If Dai Yudian dared to drop all pretenses and strike a lethal blow against the Zhu family at this critical juncture, then the Douluo imperial family would likely have to face the revenge of a titled Douluo in the future. Such a price was something the Douluo empire absolutely could not afford. Unless he could dispatch top-tier experts to successfully capture and eliminate these two girls of the Zhu family before they fully matured. But how easy was that? If the two girls of the Zhu family had really escaped under the cover of darkness last night, as Zhu Ming said, several hours had already passed since then. With a whole night's head start, it would already be very, very difficult for the Douluo empire to catch them now. Furthermore, Dai Yudian could guess with his eyes closed that the direction they were fleeing was definitely toward the Heaven-Do empire in the north. Only by escaping to the territory of a hostile nation would they be safest. Because once they successfully crossed the border and entered the heartland of the Heaven-Do empire, no matter how long the Douluo empire's reach was, it could absolutely not reach into Emperor Shui's territory to capture people. Therefore, Dai Yudian cursed Zhu Ming in his heart for being a complete old fox. Zhu Ming's move was extremely risky, but he had calculated perfectly that Dai Yudian would be wary and absolutely wouldn't dare to truly act against the Zhu family. Moreover, besides the two highly talented juniors, Zhu Zuyun and Zhu Zuqing, Zhu Ming himself, like Dai Yudian, was a spirit Douluo expert. Although Zhu Ming's rank might be a few levels lower than Dai Yudian's, one must not forget the characteristics of the Nether Spirit Cat martial soul. As an agility attack system spirit, the Nether Spirit Cat's greatest specialty was speed. If they really tore faces and fought, Zhu Ming indeed couldn't defeat Dai Yudian, who possessed the White Tiger martial soul, in a direct confrontation. However, if Zhu Ming were determined to escape, he could definitely outrun Dai Yudian. No one could stop an agility attack system spirit Douluo who was intent on fleeing. So, considering all these factors, even though Dai Yudian was the emperor of Douluo, for the sake of Zhu Ming, the spirit Douluo expert, and for the sake of the Zhu family's 10,000-year alliance, he could not impose any substantial, destructive punishment on the Zhu family. And all this compromise made his current mood very oppressed and gloomy. But such a major scandal had occurred in the empire, it couldn't just be brushed aside so lightly. To reclaim face for the imperial family and to give the people of the world an explanation, someone had to step forward and take the blame. Thus, Dai Yudian took a deep breath, suppressing the fury in his heart. His face was as grim as still water as he stared at Zhu Ming below and said in a heavy voice, no matter how you defend yourself, the fact that people were lost from your manor is a serious dereliction of duty by your Zhu family. Zhu Ming, since you repeatedly claim to be guilty, how do you intend for me to handle this matter? Chapter 184, Exile to the Border, the Power of the Misfortune card. Hearing the emperor relent, Zhu Ming secretly breathed a sigh of relief in his heart. No